But I don't know if y'all saw that thing.
We have an opening. I was speechless.
We're like a show. Today
we're like
talking,
one. We're not one.
No, we're not one.
We're similar to one.
Words chosen carefully. Speaking of which, today we are talking about Legion, the new show on FX, and by extension, we're talking about how comics depict and deal with mental health, for better and for worse. Comics have a long history of depicting mental health issues, and there are a lot of reasons. Comics as a medium are very well suited to intimate personal stories and offer writers and artists unique possibilities for visually expressing mental interior experiences. In addition, stories of the fantastic, the supernatural, and the science fictional, which make up a huge chunk of comic storytelling, can use metaphor to explore psychological concepts in interesting ways. Along with that unique potential, though, come some pitfalls. It is all too easy to fall back on tropes about mental illness, and because the stories we tell matter, if used in lazy or reductive ways, depictions of mental health issues can actually increase stigma for people who are suffering or just differently wired, and could discourage people from seeking help who might benefit from it. Also, given how much of our understanding of mental illness has changed over the past century, let alone or decades, let alone century, even attempts to operate in totally good faith can tend to age badly as certain models become discredited. Plus, in certain cases, creators have argued that they're reluctant to map psychological conditions onto characters with larger-than-life backstories because it risks trivializing them. But there's still plenty of room to celebrate the way comics can explore the mind, even if sometimes it goes in a bad, bad place. So let's talk comics and mental health.
Yay!
Hey, I'm Amy Dallen. Who are you guys?
I feel like you just did it. Like that was very well.
Good show, everybody. Let's go home.
Well,
That was a well-worded essay. All right.
Ironically, we both wrote openings for the show because we didn't know who was going to be doing it, and we basically both wrote almost the same opening. We were trading like your version of that sentence is really good. Holy cow!
Is real good, though.
Yeah,
I feel so left out that I did I was like, oh, I know I'm not opening.
you
this.
have other comic book shows that you have.
Well, I'm sorry, but you guys have other shows too. We're all busy.
We're all
is what
busy
I'm trying to say. The biggest thing that we should address is the fact that we have a round table, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, look at this. Oh,
Pretty
and
cool. And we,
Unbelievable by Ken Wynn,
Who
drew us this
came in
Legion.
at the last minute to do this?
yeah,
It's magical.
Literally doing it as we walked up, and
it's
friggin' beautiful.
Yeah,
it's all permanent marker, so it's gonna be stuck there forever.
Yeah, it's like a set tattoo. That's beautiful.
That's gorgeous.
Yep.
So you're Amy Dallen.
I'm Amy Dallen.
Sorry, I derailed us.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm Taliesin Jaffe. That's what it said when I woke up this morning, when the machine that reminds me who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm Taliesin Jaffe today.
Does it ever tell you that you're someone else?
It does.
I want your machine.
Thank you.
And
That's
we're
Adventure
accidentally
Day.
on topic.
I'm Eki.
And we'll be giving our. I'm hoping for like at least 6 awkward pauses where we'll just do the. And we're done. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
At least 6.
We've already had one.
Yeah, we're on 2 now. And then I was just gonna say, has everybody watched the Legion television series?
Yes.
Yes. Are we all caught up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's been great.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. The third one has been my favorite. I love the pilot because the pilot was, what is going on? The second one was like, you are continuing this question. But the third one was, oh, I see where you're going, and I'm so excited.
I'm gonna rewatch Pink Floyd The Wall and Dark Side of the Moon in tandem after the latest episodes. So for those of you at home who have, for some strange reason, decided that you have time to watch a 2-hour comic book show, but not a 45 to 1 hour episode of an FX series that someone spent an enormous amount of money and time producing, far more than we did for this show. Who wants to do a rundown of Legion the series?
Are we doing spoilers at all?
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Just,
How
just
are we going to
premise.
do this without spoilers?
I can do a premise.
Okay.
I can do.
do the log line. Give the elevator pitch, Tal.
Yeah.
Elevator pitch. For those of you who don't know, an elevator pitch is your attempt to sell a show to somebody in under about 5 sentences get them interested in the desperate hope they'll give you money.
You just got on the elevator, Steven Spielberg is there, and he's willing to listen to 30 seconds.
You walk in and you get off.
Legion is about a character who has mental illness, and we can sometimes go into his head and see those characters, and they manifest with superpowers.
He's either a crazy person or the most powerful mutant in the X-Men universe, or possibly both.
I choose both.
He might be both. We don't know. It might be the 70s. It might not. It's hard to tell because everything is 70s style, except for the occasional tablet computer that shows up randomly. Government officials wear pink little or like baby blue hats and
They do.
and
They
have dominoes.
They have like that one guy has like that green polyester wool. Like, what is he wearing?
I love it.
So
like
one of
disco
the most
suit,
interesting
yeah.
things about the show is that it's being shot with this very stylized sort of
Early
Yeah.
70s.
anti-contemporary, like
Anti-contemporary,
I don't
I
know,
like
that's
it.
the wrong word. But
That's
you know,
good. That's a good
how
phrase.
Secretary happens in no time period. It's just kind
Yeah.
of its own
There.
sort of retro-y thing. Like they're clearly doing that.
Yeah.
And it's so good, and it's so much fun, and he's such an unreliable narrator. Like you're watching the story from his perspective, and you genuinely don't know what's happening.
And I think my favorite stories can be like unreliable narrator because you just don't know.
Yeah, and he full on just is has flashbacks that differ, like to that level,
Yeah.
where like he'll flash back to an event and it will be different now because he's remembering it completely
That's
differently.
why I was impressed by the pilot, but I've enjoyed the second and third ones more because I like to be able to sink my teeth into a mystery. Like
Yeah.
I have a certain tolerance for David Lynchian weirdness, but my favorite stories are the ones where everything happens for a reason. So this is maybe
feel like they're
spoilery,
going
but when we
somewhere.
start dipping into his memories and actually exploring moments of weirdness that turn out to have specific causes, that's fantastic.
It's so
Yeah.
good. It's so good.
It is tricky to talk about this without spoilers.
I
I
think chat, and I'm kind of looking at you, chat. Do you feel like for those of you who know the show that we did our best attempt to like tell you, we can't really tell you what the show's about other than a crazy person who might have powers, but probably does, but we don't really know. And it might be the 70s, but we're not sure, which is the most 70s thing I may have ever said before. Go see it. It's great, would be my first comment. It's also based on a comic.
It is.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I loved about the third episode was that for the first time in the 3 hours that we've had was the first time we were like, oh, so we are involving the comic in a bigger way because like it seemed like it was like very much like one of my favorite things about Guardians of the Galaxy film was it had nothing to do with any story that had ever been written. And it was a great Guardians story because they used the characters and the concepts of those comics so well, they created their own thing. I feel like Legion for the first couple episodes was really doing that, where they're like, we use this character in his world to create something new, but still dedicated to the original
You're having a
source.
private conversation with chat.
I am. I will say, chat. Deadpool 1017 put it best at this point, which is Legion is Wes Anderson directing an X-Men show written by the guy who wrote Fight Club. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Wow.
If that sounds good to you, you should definitely watch.
They just don't have as many static shots as what Wes Anderson would have.
They'll run out of money. They'll do it eventually.
Yeah. The camera moves a little bit too much for it to be Wes Anderson, but
Any day now,
Yeah.
those moving cameras ain't cheap, man.
But yeah, the third episode was the first one where I was like, oh, it's the comic. Like it was the first time I was like, I think I see kind of where you're going.
It is interesting because they've created a lot of original characters for the show, which, like, on a show review basis, watching as a fan, there are moments where I'm like, you've recreated situations and characters that you could easily have drawn established things for, and you've decided to make new ones instead. And I'm respecting that choice while also being slightly sad as a fan that, like,
Yeah.
I'm watching, like, but you're you're executing. Are we considering it spoilery to talk about what Legion's powers are?
Well, considering
No, I don't think
that
so.
I actually think that a big Legion is upset with us for discussing his powers. Apparently, he is.
No, he brought us coffee.
He brought us coffee.
Legion's happy with me.
I have angered the Legion. I think considering that one of the things that we're going to be getting into is going to be the difference between the powers in the show and the
Yeah.
powers in the book, I think that's worth bringing up.
So we get a beautiful, tender little scene about like someone learning to develop their telepathy. And so as a fan watching, part of me is like, I'm just mad this isn't happening with Jean Grey right now.
Yeah.
But
sure.
like taking the show on its own merits, it's working pretty dang well.
There's not a lot of fan candy, but I'm kind of okay with that. Although this is the last like weirdly spoilery, super inside
Sorry, guys.
baseball. This is the part of the show. It's very inside baseball. This is my inside baseball question: Shadow King or Mojo?
I was leaning Mojo.
I want
I mean,
it.
I don't
Wait,
think they would do
you
it,
mean,
The devil with the yellow eyes.
Oh, I think it's I think they're basing it on X-Men Legacy. I think
Okay,
it's like
you're going legacy. I don't know.
but I think
think
that's
it's-
more likely. But it was impossible not to see.
I want my heart. My heart wants Mojo.
Oh man, I want.
It'd be
I
too
would,
weird, though, right? It'd be too.
We will do
It
an
would be
episode. We will do an episode
super
on X
weird.
Babies at some point, and we will talk about Mojo.
It would be super duper weird. I like if those are the only two options. I'm saying Shadow King, but I think it's a father figure because
How brave would it be if it were Mojo?
Oh, dude. Yeah, but that would like.
No, that would be like
Yeah,
even
that
though
was-
I just answered that, I have to roll it back. Like that would be crazy, but that
Yeah.
was my first thought.
Well,
So
he looks Mojo-ish, but again, I think it's like this sort of like haunting, sort of like personality that's based on his father figures, very similar to what they're doing and what they did in his comic.
So I do have to pivot to the topic a little
Yes.
bit here. I think the show is stylish and wonderful in a lot of ways, but like, boy, is it tropey about mental illness, especially in that first episode. That is a 70s
Yeah.
stereotype of a mental hospital that you like. It's not a great perspective on medication. It's not a great perspective on sort of like the highly simplified like, what if your difference is just what makes you who you are? It's like, that's a really important question, but it's not sort of as simple as they make it for their kind of narrative beats. I don't know. I don't think that makes the show garbage, but it's stuck out
well,
to me.
and I give any show like that any show like this an awful lot of love for the Act One. Act One is always going to like no one's really interested in making a show about healthy damaged people getting better. That's
Like the portrayal
so we're always
of
going to see the weird.
The therapist we're meeting in flashbacks later on seems like significantly better
Yes.
than the hospital therapist, where like he's asking real questions about like if you have certain issues, like a stable home environment might be good for you. That's like a that makes
So-
sense.
And it's very One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is kind of the vibe I get from a lot of the Clockworks Hospital, which is the name of the hospital.
Remind me, what were they doing in Clockworks? Because it's been a couple weeks since I've seen it.
Group therapy. There was the pill regimen. It was a lockdown ward.
Yeah.
It was a lockdown ward, and he had been there for a very, very long time.
Yeah, it was a bit
guess.
240
prison-y.
Wednesdays or something like that.
I'm
6 years.
I'm even of the opinion it may turn out to have not been a hospital at all. Like
I
and
kind
that
of am,
that
too.
they could
yeah.
get around my whole thing by being like, no, that
You
because we're
thought,
already
yeah.
Let me throw this grenade
Okay.
into the room. And doing a little research before the show, I was reminded of an episode of Gotham where they were in the Arkham Asylum, and that was like cartoonishly bad.
Poor
like,
Well, we'll
you
get
know,
to
so-
Arkham.
Sure,
we will
sure,
get to
will,
Arkham.
We will. But like if that's the sort of barometer, like Legion, I was like, oh well, they did that very well. They portray mental illness very well. Like, good for you, Legion, because like that's the way. To do it like full on tropey is what Gotham does, and like that's
Right.
Gotham's like tone, whatever, like campy and everything.
On a slight because I know that even for our show we're getting very we're getting very up our own butts a bit.
It's week two, still
It's
up our
week 2.
butts.
We're still learning. Pete Wiz actually asked, to those unfamiliar with this particular bit of comic lore, who is Mojo?
Nice. Oh yes.
Man, what a great question.
You know what, Taliesin? All of us could answer it.
So since it almost certainly isn't in the show, this isn't a spoiler.
No.
right?
Not a spoiler. Take it. Take it.
Mojo is a interdimensional television producer. He's a big, fat, yellow blob that walks around with like a mechanical spider leg system
got
and
the-
genetically, and he's got his eyes held open like
So he can watch
broadsheets
everything.
from Clockwork Orange. And he produces highly rated reality television from our reality for his reality, and mostly what he does is
Pretty impressive because he was created in the 80s.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure
Very
this was
old.
like a real thing.
yeah, it was more of a nightmare verse where this happened as opposed to something actually people now do.
So basically, what you're saying is that we currently reside in the Nightmareverse.
We are in the nightmare verse now.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
And he was recording the X-Men and broadcasting their lives as live television without their permission as a way of, and like eventually, like because they like vanished and started hiding from him, had to spin them off with X-babies, and he genetically engineered
He made tiny, cute versions
cute
of the
X-Men.
And if you were tuning in last week, you know that one of the comic book issues with the return of those X-babies got Amy to buy one of her first comics.
And
Tiny, cute X-Men, I'm in!
He-
they were
he-
being hunted down. It was not so great.
And Mojo genetically engineered a bunch of characters. Like he's this big, awful, evil nightmare creature. Like really hardcore. Like back when the X-Men got very psychedelic for a while.
Yeah.
And he was part of that. He created Spiral, who's one of my favorite characters.
Lots of arms.
She's got 6 arms and
Also,
Longshot.
Longshot.
Longshot. But did he create Longshot, or was Longshot a
Longshot's
denizen
from the Mojoverse,
of the Mojo?
but
I
I
think
don't
That's
know.
weird. I think. Yeah, it gets weird
Like,
because
yeah, did Mojo create everything in the Mojoverse, or does he just rule it?
I think he just rules it. I think he
Okay.
took it over
I think
and rules
he's
it.
claimed to have created everything in the Mojoverse, but he's also full of shit all the
You know,
time.
it's
too.
and it's entirely possible that Longshot actually came from another universe and Mojo pulled him in, and that's just where we first met him.
that's mine. Yeah.
And then
You'd call it
Shatterstar
like
is
a
also
casting
from
call.
there, right? Shatterstar
Yeah.
with the double
Shatterstar
swords.
and like Mojo like genetically copyrights anybody he can. He like oh, it's so creepy. It's so creepy.
Yeah,
Creator rights
Mojo's
issues in the Mojoverse. Somebody
Major
launch a
domo
new.
and-
So yeah,
Yeah.
weird '80s X-Men character, but it was a place that our brains were sort of primed to go, even though that would be a very strange direction to take the television show, because Legion is a product of weird
It's a
'80s
strange
X-Men
direction to take
storytelling.
an X-Men television show.
as we can see right there.
This I went rooting
Bless
through
you.
my New Mutants at my house. I had forgotten actually that his early appearances were in the pages of New
the New
Mutants.
Mutants,
and
yep.
cool thing about the show, it is credited to based on the comics by Chris Claremont and Bill Sienkiewicz, the writer and artist of this stretch of issues of New Mutants, where we
Are you gonna find him?
find a good. Well, here's the title page. There we
So
go.
good.
That is not the type font of a sane and rational comic book.
Oh man.
But
so
the artwork in New Mutants is not sane. Like,
this is
No,
a period
it's
where Bill
beautiful.
Sienkiewicz, the artist,
Oh,
was
God, I
really
love that piece.
stretching the boundaries of sort of standard classical superhero art.
Yeah.
And they particularly wanted to make use of it on stories like this that had some sort of mind-bending or psychedelic elements, which they did to great effect.
Oh, such a good book.
Yeah. Those are kind of the best ones from this issue. And that here's him screaming on the cover. But it also does, I was revisiting his origin, it gets us some of those, I adore Chris Claremont, and no one has ever had better intentions than Chris Claremont, but you read back through this book and he's described as autistic based on a trauma that happens, as in he has been autistic since that trauma happened. And they
And
also
not-
describe him as schizophrenic, and they're just sort of, I think, word souping it.
Yeah, there's a bit of
To
word
try
soup.
to describe the idea of this, this idea that they've come up with that expresses itself as a combination of psychological trauma and mutant powers.
Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't get autism from a traumatic experience, right?
I'm pretty sure that is not the
We're-
case.
Nor can you get schizophrenia, right? That's a genetic thing that
In
you're born
addition
with,
to the
right?
fact that this was 1985 and the definitions of autism and schizophrenia have been much refined and changed since then.
We don't know a lot. There's
Okay.
a lot. I will actually say, and this was something I was doing a little bit of research on, is some of these things are genetic, but genetic markers actually can shift after you're born. There's a thing that can happen. There's a thing that can happen in genes. Just to do a little science drop here.
Epigenetics?
Yeah, where certain stimulus, dopamine and adrenaline and different things that happen to you in the very early childhood development, actually create chemicals that then, to simplify it mind-bendingly for life in the universe, create chemicals that can get into your cell system and basically they gum up your genetic code, so certain parts of your genetic code can't be activated.
And this can happen later in life.
This can happen, especially this is what happens to a lot of early development. This can happen early in development, where something will happen, or you'll have a rush of chemicals over a certain experience. One of the things they found is children who were malnourished as children had their children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren had I want to say 25% less chance of getting heart disease later in life. Because of the genetic marker left from that experience made them less likely to develop heart disease. It's very weird. And if you were very well fed as a kid, that number suddenly starts to skyrocket once the genetic code has been left alone. It's very interesting. But yeah, this stuff can get in and gum up the genetics and create interesting conditions that are, while they are genetic, are also tied environmentally. It's a complex system, and we're learning so much every day.
Yeah.
Really, we're still just trying to define everything, because it's so hard to define what's happening in your head from a personal experience that's why the terminology is changing all the time as they try and refine this really complex piece of meat.
We getting any good Comments from chat. I feel like. Are
these comics on Marvel Unlimited? Yes, quite a few of them are.
That's how I've been reading them, actually.
And
so the more recent series that we're going to refer to that these guys are going to have to fill in out because I've only read the beginning of is X-Men Legacy, which is went 4 paperbacks worth.
What a great cover.
Story
it really is.
About David Haller, aka Legion.
Give his short run origin actually for people who don't know the character. In
the comics, and this may or may not turn out to be a spoiler for the TV show because who knows?
We do not know.
In the comics, David Haller is the son of Professor Charles Xavier, and interestingly, the Israeli ambassador to the UK, Gabriel Haller. Except that at the time that we meet him in the 80s, he is the unknown son of Professor Xavier because his mother did not choose to inform Charles about all that because they had their own complicated history. But she has to call on Professor Xavier for help when her son, who has been nonverbal for many years since a terrible tragedy befell them.
It was a terrorist attack, right? Or something like that? Yeah.
Was caught in a terrorist attack as around the age of 10, I think. And as they find out in the course of the story, because he's inherited psychic powers from his dad, it combines with that experience, and here's where it gets very comic booky. He absorbs the psyche of the gentleman responsible for the attack and then creates a series of defenses inside his own mind, which leave him sort of effectively nonverbal for many years until his powers start lashing out, which turn out to be, and now we're getting into the powers, that he has telepathy, telekinesis, and some pyrokinesis. Were sort of the primary early ones. Legion goes through a lot of later developments, and different things happen to him as over time they sort of attempt to kind of heal him from those experiences. And that's part of why, like, putting terms on these can be a bad thing, because it's sort of like, you don't heal someone from autism. They live with their autism because their autism is a part of them, which is why maybe it was not a great idea to use that term, but I think it was being used to sort of mean expressing non-verbally for years.
Yeah.
And here we are in the complicated.
The thing I always really loved about Legion, my favorite thing about Legion in the early days was, and for those who are familiar with Professor X, I feel like we don't need to define Professor X. You've all seen a movie. I love about Patrick Stewart, it's Patrick Stewart at this point. You know, it's
So Legion is the son of Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. He's baby Captain Picard.
Baby Picard.
The thing I loved about it, and this is a thing that I was. If you read any early X-Men, Professor Xavier is a jerk. It's actually been said in the book. Professor Xavier is a jerk. I have it on my
panel of Kitty Pryde.
He's kind of awful. And he was kind of, and like, I loved how First Class, they kind of like got into like young Professor Xavier was a womanizer and kind of sleazy.
I get defensive about all of these sort of like, it's more interesting if Professor Xavier's a jerk takes, but they have a long and
they do the thing, and he was, I mean, like, he put teenagers into death traps and said, "Learn to fly." You know, he was
a little bit.
But the thing I like about it is there's an interesting story that a lot of these great people that we idolize and these people who do all of these great work. Hayao Miyazaki is a great example of someone who is beloved by everybody, but definitely there is some family issues that exist there.
Do I not want to know?
You don't want to know, definitely great creator, not necessarily the nicest things to be said in other aspects of his life, but like, this is a thing that I like that it, on a certain level, that it humanizes people, that we can't all be our best selves all the time. And Xavier is the world's most powerful telepath. He knew. He did not the day I remember being a teenager going, you knew about, I mean, like,
you never bought it?
I had a dad who buggered off, and like, so I was like, I'm keenly aware of these things. I'm like, how did you not? You knew. Come on.
Interesting. Have they ever made that canon, or is it?
It's been
a lot of Legion stories.
There's been a lot of Legion stories. It's been touched on. I will say one of the things I really like that they do in, like, you know how they do. One of the things that they do in comics is that the past is very malleable. We have the now, and the now is where everything is true, and then the past, everything gets a little scrubby.
See, last week on the definition of retroactive continuity, or retcon.
It's the what war did Tony Stark build the Iron Man suit in? That changes every war. That war changes. And
originally Korea.
Korea.
Okay. Yeah.
Interestingly, Professor Xavier also originally a Korean War veteran.
Korean War vet.
Not so much anymore.
Not anymore. And that's
Well,
the
consider
soft-
like the Silver Age starts, like for Marvel at least, like in the early 60s, which is like
all
right
recent
after
history, yeah.
Korea. So it totally makes sense to use that as a backdrop.
Yeah,
That's-
the past always gets squishy.
Yeah.
We squish it.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, it was a war, and it's whatever war is convenient for the moment.
yeah,
It doesn't really matter.
Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
He
Well,
was,
you know,
he
put
was,
it nice.
he was like, "Hey, Cap, let's go get him." And turns out, no, he was like a sniper and a badass all of his own.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen until
Frozen for 50 years.
They're
60
revising
years,
Bucky.
70
70
years,
years,
80 years.
90 years.
Cap himself. Originally, he was frozen in ice. Like, once they brought him back and established he'd been frozen in ice, he was super thrown because he had been gone for almost 20 years. And it's a huge part of
My
his story
God.
in the 60s, is
Yeah.
that, like, everyone is somewhat older than he remembers. And that's a huge deal, as it would be if you were frozen
Yeah.
for 20 years, but it now seems like nothing to us because we're like, no, you were frozen for like 60 years, dude.
Yeah.
Everyone you
Yeah.
know is nearly dead.
Yeah, if they're not
sorry
dead
about that.
already.
Yeah, there's some great questions we'll get to in a
Yeah,
second.
okay, sorry.
But no, and like we were worried we wouldn't have 2 hours of stuff to talk about nonsensically on the internet.
We're just gonna
So,
dip a toe
so
in.
because of that soft past, especially in Legion, he kind of like when he thinks about his dad, he thinks about his dad being a terrible, terrible father. So they've kind of like pushed in that like way to like leave me alone and not deal with me and go like save everybody else's kids.
Yeah.
You
like,
were
ignore your
a
own.
surrogate father to everyone in the world except me.
Except for
Yeah,
me.
and
yeah.
like coming to terms. A lot of that Legion book is him coming to terms with.
What, in fact,
not
I
being
just
Xavier.
I reread one of my favorite issues of that last night. I want to say it's 15. I'm all of a sudden forgetting, but it's where he confronts his mother. Like he liberates Britain of their mutophobia. They're all afraid of mutants. He uses like British mutants like Chamber and Psylocke.
Love Chamber.
And a few others to change the public opinion of mutants in one night, and he does it all by like controlling his various personalities to help them do their things.
We're gonna have to get into that.
It is awesome, but like he does that, and then Agent Pete Wisdom.
Oh God! Wow, we're going so
M13,
dark. We're going so deep into the hell. Okay, yeah. Weird British
I'm
mutants.
so glad that you caught up on this because I've only read the first volume and I had no idea this was coming, and I'm very excited.
Yeah. And I haven't finished it, by the way. I've only read the first 2 trades of it.
Okay.
I was trying to finish it this week and didn't get the chance to. But
Life.
yeah, life. Girl, life.
We can't finish these books. We certainly don't expect
so
you
sorry.
to.
Yeah, exactly. We're just very well informed. So the very next issue, so Pete Wisdom, as like payback for the hell that Legion puts him through, is like, by the way, called your mom. She's coming to get you. And he's like, no, you what? You can't do that. You know. So the very next issue,
Pete is a British government spook, by the way. He's basically a British government guy.
Yeah.
Super quick.
and the entire issue, I think it's issue 15. Internet, correct me if I'm wrong.
They will.
I know they will. That's why I'm like, you know what? Just give it to me, because I most likely am. He confronts his mom about his past, about what he went through, about all of that, and how like he's like, Dad just like left me here, and you left me, like, and by the end of it, there's like this beautiful reconciliation, and I was just like, this is like when I first read it, a couple of months ago, I was just like, this is one of the most gorgeous comic books I've ever read. Just like, I grew up in the church, like I went to seminary, like I am a sucker for stories about reconciliation. Like every time I watch Royal Tenenbaums, at the very, very end, when Royal Tenenbaum walks up to the Ben Stiller character, and Ben Stiller's just like, it's been a tough year, Dad. He's like, I know, Chazzy boy, and like hugs him. I cry every time, because like the entire movie is them like at odds with each other, and like I cry every time. So like when I read this for the first time a couple months ago, I was like,
Yeah, it's heavy.
oh, it's really heavy. It's really, really heavy. So, yeah.
Just to address some of the questions that have been coming in from the chat. Hi guys, we do know you. How do we feel about him not being Scottish in the show? I feel like the accent would have been a distraction, and
I agree.
Technically,
He's raised in Scotland.
Raised in Scotland.
He's raised on Muir Island by Moira McTaggart, one of the all-time great supporting characters of the X-Men.
Well, raised after around the age of 10 to 12,
I guess 'cause, yeah, he
when
was
the
living
powers
in
manifest
Paris.
themselves, and
Yeah.
she has such little understanding of who he is and what he can do, and she lives in fear of what he can do, so much so that she kind of
pins him down. And I blame Proteus.
Well, that's a whole nother. That we'll get to. I can't pronounce his name, but if you want to talk about Batman, and Green Goblin, we will get to that. We will get to villains in a bit. We know. Is Legion classified as a Omega level mutant?
Yeah.
Omega level mutants are the super powerful mutants who are actually a like planetary threat. Once you become
That's generally the-
Magneto, Storm,
yeah,
Professor X is
Jean Grey,
obviously.
I think like it was one of those Icemen ended up on that list, and everyone was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
dude."
because I
think so.
Omega level mutants are basically if you're so powerful from just a genetic defect, like that genetic quirk that aliens possibly know who you are. Like if there are aliens who are like, oh, that Magneto guy is down there.
Earthlings.
Yeah.
Yeah, list of people who are like you get nervous when they leave the planet. Who is the bigger jerk, Xavier or Scott Summers? I feel like that's a whole episode right there.
Jeez.
I'm on the Scott Summers fan club.
What if you got
Yeah, you really
Cable
are.
and
I
Legion
really-
in a room to be like, talk about your dad?
Yeah, who's the worst father? Maybe Scott.
I mean, they did their best.
He
sort of.
sent it. Well, yeah, that's a whole
I think
bad
Professor
dads.
X is
We'll
the
do a
worst
bad dad
guy.
episode.
I love and will defend both of them, but maybe not his dad's.
Legion is more powerful than Professor X. Couldn't he hide himself? That's been covered. There's actually only one mutant telepath. This is my trivia question. There's only one mutant telepath who's actually like been super capable of completely covering themselves. Some of them can like cloak, like the Shadow King can kind of cloak. But like, there's one character whose power is actually that his brain is invisible, so it's really hard to see.
Is it Quentin Quire?
I was thinking of Cassandra because she successfully sort of
Oh yeah,
blocked
Cassandra
herself out of his
Nova.
She
mind.
blocked herself out of his mind. Yeah, but Quire is always naturally. They call him the cellophane brain. That's his. That was his like the mean thing.
We are deep into Grant Morrison's new X-Men at this point, and some of the gifts that he gave to the world.
Stark might have been originally been Vietnam, but I think it was Korea.
I feel like it was Korea, but it could
that's
be
Googleable.
Vietnam. But that
X-Men,
would.
like, yeah.
When did Vietnam start? Like that was.
Where would I go for a
How long
condensed
showed up?
story of recent X-Men history? I would go to Comic Book Girl.
Yes.
If you want to
Or
know.
Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men.
Yeah,
which
there's-
is just delightful.
There's Comic Book Girl 19, I want to say.
Comic
Book
Comic Girl
19?
19 did a complete like YouTube.
That's sort of like a classic X-Men 3-part extravaganza series where she explains it all because she's
It's
the
nuts.
best.
Yeah, it's nuts. That's a great way to go because a lot of it is they're classics, which means that they're great to have read but very hard to read.
Yes.
Some of them more so than others.
Yeah.
You'll like. I swear, some of the classic stuff you can just jump into. It'll be very Claremonty, but like a lot of it, I think, still reads really well.
I always think of it as like what I imagined Buffy would be like before I'd actually watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Everybody's just gonna be talking about their feelings all the time and and then I watch Buffy. And I'm like, okay, I'm in.
I feel like there's a bit of a like language curve with the earlier stuff versus like the newer stuff.
Sure.
Where it's like I feel like I have to get my mind like, all right, I'm about to sit down and read Shakespeare. Okay, it's gonna take me a second or two, and then once I get into that flow, I can read as many as I want. Like very similar. to how
I
read
will say, like,
Shakespeare.
the Lee Kirby X-Men's don't read super
No, they do
well.
not.
No, they do not.
Oh, they do
I
not.
love them, but yeah.
They're beautiful
Different
on the
set
wall.
of- they did so much that we value for so many reasons. But
So-
they're not as easy to read. Like you
Nope.
switch from that to like Lee Kirby Fantastic Four, and you're like, oh, okay. I
Everything's
get it.
easier now. There'll be a Kirby episode too because I have such
Who's
a.
Kirby?
I love you. But the thing that they do at the beginning of this legacy book, which I really enjoy. I forget the Scottish accent. I miss the hair. Although they do
Yeah.
a good job. This ridiculous natural hair. He doesn't use product. It's a
His
byproduct
hair
of his mutant.
just does that.
Is that he has created a mental prison, which I thought was really interesting, where he.
This is the first time you see that, right?
Yeah.
Like, that you've never really
That
experienced that,
conceit
before this
starts here.
book. Yeah.
Because over time, like I think we hinted at it in his original origin, but over time it became an established part of Legion's particular power set and psychological landscape that different abilities within his mutant power set were tied to, there's not really another way to say this, different personalities.
Because he's got dissociative personality disorder.
It's
Kinda.
what was at the time
Like
considered
schizophrenic.
multiple personality disorder, but a lot of these categories are sort of discredited.
Yeah,
now.
MPD doesn't exist anymore. It's now been subdivided into like 6 other things. But MPD was really popular in comics because it's really cool to draw.
Extremely popular. Yeah, it gives you a lot of storytelling possibilities. It just unfortunately is not
Yes.
exactly what we thought it was.
And we'll get into a bit more of that in a minute. But yeah, he's got this prison where he locks up the various negative aspects of his personality and then can like drain them for powers. But he has to kind of confront them every time he does it. And if some of them get out, they can overpower him and take him over.
Especially like the more powerful.
Yeah, the bigger the issue.
The bigger the issue, the more powerful the power. So it's like, oh, if I want to be able to travel through time, I'm going to have to really tackle this gigantic daddy issue. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna really have to deal with this right now.
And like the issues themselves, the little demons, like they can bite into him, and then like while he's in pain, he spends 4 days rampaging across the Chinese countryside, torturing like animals or something. Like something awful happens.
Not fully knowing that that's what
No,
he's
and
doing,
then
yeah.
he like snaps out of it, and I kind of like that because that I think is a metaphor that works even without the MPD of that kind of, oh God, I'm coming down. What happened?
Like, taking it as an example of just that this is the way this particular character's mythology has grown, it does become a pretty interesting examination of his thing.
Can we just acknowledge? Excuse you.
Chat's so great right now.
Oh
Sorry,
man, yeah. Can we just acknowledge how wonderful comic books are in the sense that like you get to see this evolution of character. Like when Legion started off, he was this. Here's what you had. He was the son of Professor X, who was telepathic, telekinetic, and like pyrokinetic, basically. Wasn't really like dealing with it. Like he had like his issues, but it wasn't like I have 100 different personalities in my brain, and each one of them is an Omega level mutant on its own. Like that evolved over the course of 20 or 30 years. And comics, like that's one of the things that I think makes comic books so fun.
There's something so beautiful about how
Like,
everyone builds on this
yeah.
foundation everyone else has left for them. It can be what makes comics really overwhelming, but it also gives rise to these sort of like, you don't get a 30-year shared storytelling collaboration on the nature of identity like this.
Yeah,
no.
Without
It's
everybody
very much
opting in.
It's very much like, you know, like you've done improv. Like have we all
It's
done
very improv.
classes?
It's
where,
LA.
like,
We've all done
you do
improv.
those exercises where it's like the one-word stories, or
Yes, I
like
am.
you know, you tell a sentence, now you tell a sentence, and we all build the story together. It's very much like that, but like writ large.
Well,
like,
it's like great because like a 17-year-old kid from Jersey is sitting down in 1962, comes up with this spark of an idea of a character that obviously makes sense, is important, is working on this very visceral level, and it's about something. And a dozen creators take 30 years to refine his idea into something that works, and
Yeah.
which is why a lot of these characters start out very problematic. And refine into these really not that we're going to talk about Iron Fist today, but Iron Fist is a great example of like what a mess. And then by the end of it, you're like, what a great idea.
yeah.
But like, what a mess. But what a great idea. And
Yeah, like
there's so
the
many what a messes.
Matt Fractions.
Captain America is kind of a mess
Yeah.
when you look at it, and then eventually becomes a great idea of like, let's just put a guy in a flag suit punching Hitler, and then turn him eventually into this really great meditation on
actual
patriotism.
values, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like A Man at a Time, like what an interesting story in so many ways. Like they don't capitalize on it as much as I wish they would sometimes, but like this man living out of time with these golden age values, like all of a sudden confronted with this modern digital internet age, is like there's so many fun stories and themes to explore there that you couldn't get if you didn't have a character that was out of time. Yeah.
So I would love to bring up Crazy Jane.
Yes. Okay. So among
don't know
this,
if you wanna
it
go
is
there.
very popular to use these different ideas. Let's see.
I was gonna say, do you want to explain the Doom Patrol? We could also, if you guys want to put up a Doom Patrol or like the Doom Patrol Crazy Jane cover.
Oh yeah, perfect.
They've got it digitally. If you guys want to put it up on screen.
Exactly.
She is so 80s adorable. She's 80s tastic.
So I've only read the beginning of this run, and I've met her, and she makes quite an impression. But I'm
She
gonna let you
does.
explain.
Well, I mean, I didn't know if you wanted to do the origin of Doom Patrol because it's
Okay.
kind of fun and X-Men-y.
So Doom Patrol is yes, X-Men. We got into it a little bit, I think, last week.
Briefly.
But they were created in the 1960s as one of the first sort of weirdo groups in comics. And this was sort of people who like rather than being like, I have the power to be big and strong and amazing. There was like people whose powers caused them problems or had trouble fitting in. And it was one of the first books to sort of explore that idea. And for its time, it was weird and kind of groundbreaking. And then, decades pass and no one's necessarily doing anything with them. And then Grant Morrison comes along.
And then this crazy Scotsman comes in. He's like, I'll play with this.
He actually comes in, I think, at like issue 19. So they had brought them back and somebody else was writing them. And then he was like, presumably, I've got an idea. And he takes what seemed like him the basic elements of Doom Patrol, which is that it should break down your expectations and it should do things you haven't seen before and it should change your mind, possibly literally. And he explores it in this now legendary run of comics, which incorporate, like, he writes a wonderful introduction to the most recent collections, where he's talking about how, like, that year he'd just been watching a lot of surrealist film at this particular, like, revival theater by his house. And he wanted to do that. He wanted to play with those ideas. He wanted to use imagery and ideas that he hadn't really seen anyone incorporating in comics.
Nightmare-inducing.
And he does it to wonderful effect. But, so among the characters that because he introduced her, right?
He introduced her. She was one of several characters he
He uses a lot of
introduced.
pre-existing characters that he sort of puts his own spin on, but
Robot
he adds
Man
some of his own, such as...
Robot Man. Well, the big one that he added that was my like coolest comic book girl I'd ever seen was a character named Crazy Jane. And Crazy Jane was very much DC Comics' version of Legion. I hate that they always have to base these things in trauma. It's basically Session 9, like bad things happened to her as a kid, but she also was she was this immensely powerful superhuman. She wasn't a superhuman. There was a big event. She was just this big MPD mess, multiple personality disorder mess in a mental institution. And there was some event, some big DC cosmic rays bathe the Earth and create 20 new comic properties. I mean superheroes. Like you do. And she was one of the ones where like, well, this really unfortunate person who can barely get their shit together got really cool powers. And hers was she had like 100 different personalities that would fight for control. And I don't think her actual like baseline Jane personality spent an awful lot of time on top. They would actually, her subconscious was always painted as a subway system. And there was a character called the Driver who would kind of curate who was in control at any one time, and each character that could take control had a different superpower, but also had a completely different agenda. And some of them were helpful. That the one in the background in that picture that just popped up, which comes in, was Black Annis, who was just like would show up and be like
when the moment
cannibalistic
strikes,
and evil and man-hating and like this like Baba Yaga witch that like every now and then would show up in the middle of a fight and suddenly, okay, we have a whole new problem.
Yeah.
And she had a character who was just her head just turned into a sun and would just radiate things. And
she's used to great effect in the comic, at least as far as I've read, because they often pair her as a foil to Robot Man, Cliff.
Cliff, yeah.
Who is just the most ordinary, down-to-earth guy trapped in the body of a robot you will ever meet.
Yeah, he was a race car driver. Cliff was a race car driver who got in an accident and had radical surgery. They could only save the brain, so he's just a brain in a robot body and has intense dissociative issues because he's just a brain in a robot body and has no sense of touch. And he's just a nice guy, but he's just a guy.
That reminds me of Ghost Robot from Venture Brothers.
Yeah.
I am Ghost Robot.
It's an obvious pull. Yeah,
I am the ghost stuck in the body of a robot.
And
so dumb.
There's some amazing episodes with issues where they use Cliff to great effect, and Cliff and Jane kind of bond, and there's this really brother-sistery thing, and like she's like it's a very family book. Like they really treat each other. They eventually get a little girl who's
family friendly. That's not what.
Not family friendly. Because it's like Doctor Who nightmare scary.
But that's a good way of putting it. It's like it's Doctor Who scary. It's sort of Twilight Zone scary. It's surrealist film scary. It's not just like torture porn.
It's not torture.
It's not bloody gore.
Yeah, although that does happen too. And there's things like one of the characters that eventually joins the team is a sentient street that can teleport. That's also a transvestite street. It's a sentient thinking street that communicates through signage that just appears wherever, and that's their headquarters, is a street that can teleport anywhere in the world.
Amazing.
And all of the shops are like guns and ammo and like all very manly, but they all have doilies, and that's what, and like that was like it wants to be this very pretty street, but it's also like very masculine, and it's a very weird book.
Sex
it's
and
great.
gender in comics will be a
Whole nother
future
thing.
and ongoing discussion.
A really fun one.
But
I think
it is, yeah, like a lot of.
And Doom Patrol was a lot of groundbreaking, but she was one of those things where I wish they hadn't had that initial trauma, but was at the time I was kind of going through some teenage bullshit, and they were putting me on all sorts of medication, and I really loved that book. That was a book where that was a character that she was vulnerable in a way that often something we didn't say about Legion was he was a villain when he showed up for a while.
Or at least he was a
was a
force of
misunderstood,
danger,
Mental illness is often used as a way of making sensitive villains. It is a way. It's a way to make you like a villain.
Yeah,
because they don't mean it.
They can't help themselves. They don't want to do this, but they have compulsions.
Daredevil's Gladiator, who also shows up in the TV show, was one of those villains who was like a little slow and sometimes got stuck in his head. And you liked him when he was being good, but if he got pushed by the wrong people, could just like kind of disassociate and become a problem. Daredevil's got a ton of them. What's her name?
Typhoid Mary.
Typhoid Mary.
Yeah.
She's a total sweetheart until
and then all of
the
Batman.
switch. Yep.
Yeah, and then that's, of course, like, someone asked about Gotham and Arkham earlier, and that's, like, a huge deal. Gotham's Rogues Gallery is an exploration of different sort of...
neuroses and
almost every Batman villain has they're all in Arkham because they are all like weird, iconic manifestations of psychological issues.
Yeah.
Of disassociations, of even Harley Quinn actually is, what was her condition is Bonnie and Clyde syndrome, which is a real thing of people who become obsessed with and latch on to negative people.
So what is Bonnie? Like, I've never actually heard that that's an actual syndrome.
Bonnie and Clyde syndrome is something they've actually, because I used to be part of a Batman cosplay group, and we were mapping everybody because we were bored. And Bonnie and Clyde syndrome is a thing where like women will write and propose marriage to Charles Manson,
right? Or
also sometimes, or men too. It goes both ways, but it's mostly women just due to gender issues and serial killers, where they start to associate with somebody who's doing negative things and will actually eventually almost become a heavy encouragement to it, where it's a guy who's already like on his 6th kill and he's like got a girlfriend now, is going like, let's do 4 more, let's do it. And like, how did that happen? Like, what are the odds? And they're not odds. It's that the right two personalities together start to amplify. It's like two people in a bad relationship who become worse than the sum of their parts when they're dating. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that was an actual syndrome. Like, when you brought up Harley, I was like, would that be like Stockholm syndrome, maybe? But like you were Bonnie and Clyde, like
it's a different,
it's a different thing, but I think they're probably
or at least
related.
a description of a phenomenon which is often observed.
Yeah. So what would we say is the Riddlers?
God, I remember because we actually went into this. Well, it's
because the Riddler is my favorite Batman.
It's
now I'm curious
because I had to play him in the thing, and so I had to think about this. It's Delusions of Grandeur. And
maybe that's why I like
personality
him so much.
And a personality because his whole thing is all about comparing himself to other people.
Yeah,
and very OCD.
I want to circle back to something you remarked upon with Crazy Jane, which is that we're sort of talking about how like multiple personalities isn't really a thing, but it was an interesting character who like helped you in a lot of ways, sort of identifying through her and finding her heroism, and that's sort of an interesting like a lot of these. And I use the word problematic because problematic is a great word. A lot of these problematic figures, they can be like useful even if they're limited. They like, and I never want to take something away. Like if you've been on the wrong medications and you identify with a description that makes medications like seem bad, like that's fantastic.
Problematic.
My problem was like I wasn't medicated for way too long, and so I get angry when I see things that paint all like pharmaceutical intervention as bad because I'm like, you're discouraging people from taking it on. But the truth is, a lot of people's experience is that they've been put on the wrong drugs. So there's usefulness that you can get out of all like these depictions, even if they're imperfect.
If you would like to see a great like 13-issue run of somebody on the wrong medications trying to like find the right medication, please refer to the first about 15 episodes of Critical Role, and you can watch me going through not that drug, nope, not that drug, nope, not that drug, and around episode 16 was that drug. Okay, I'm good now again. Every now and then you got to switch them up. But yeah, that's my favorite.
Medicine is an evolving thing.
Well, no, and that's a great thing because you can actually like watch me play, and I actually occasionally was like using that as a tracker when I was playing, going like, oh my god, what is? That don't look good.
But to tag on what you guys are saying, like in college, I became like very full disclosure and very open. Because we're all friends here.
We're all friends
We're all
here.
friends at the
Us and
Wednesday
the
Club.
entire internet. Hello.
Us and the entire internet. We're all friends here. But I was like legitimately suicidal in college. Like actually had to go seek help, like depression, suicidal, and Paxil and therapy. I think saved me from that.
Oh, therapy.
And therapy, by the way, is the greatest. It's the greatest thing. Don't let anyone tell you that it's not. If you need
not
it, go
let
get it.
anyone
It's
tell you.
amazing.
I love therapy.
It has a stigma.
Yet,
Throw it away.
let's
Yes,
take a moment.
no.
If you need help, please do not be afraid to reach out. Like, I know this is a really important topic. Like, if anyone has a good hotline number that they can throw in chat right now, that would be fantastic.
This studio alone probably keeps like 7 or 8 therapists in
Yeah.
full like
Yeah,
in full
absolutely.
swing.
But like,
I'm certainly helping on that one.
in all honesty, like I know, like within our particular subculture, we probably have like a lot of like autistic or depressed or just a number of psychoses, and like if you're not seeking help and you need it, go get it.
I know
like-
we also know that it's not easy, but like,
No.
let us
No.
be the ones to tell you to do it.
Yeah,
if you can.
I was going to save this to the end, but I'll definitely do
Sorry,
this.
yeah, we were talking about.
We were talking about like
We'll get really personal right at the end, so there's not that much.
No,
No, but
they-
like we started talking
We're
about it. I was
there.
like,
Yeah.
it was organic. It was
I
organic.
am going to throw this out because somebody on Twitter, and I should have written your name down, when we posted that we were doing this topic, a lot of people hit us with great recommendations for things to talk
So
about.
many great
For instance,
recommendations.
Jessica Jones has a really wonderful handling of dealing with trauma.
Think of her.
Yeah.
Oh God, she's good.
Different trauma forms in the comics and TV, which is an interesting thing I'd love to talk about in the
Yeah.
future
Oh,
because
God.
it's weird. Like they made different choices in both, but I loved both choices, even though they did different things.
Could be an interesting topic is just adaptations in general.
Yeah, no, that's a whole.
gonna
That's
have
like
to-
3 episodes right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So somebody shouted out Green Lantern 15, which I hadn't. Green Lanterns.
I haven't read-
this is the current Sam Humphries run on the Green Lantern books, starring Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz as the 2 new Green Lanterns of Earth.
New to me.
What?
I haven't read any of it yet.
It's fantastic. This book started last summer, and issue 15 is a standalone about Jessica Cruz dealing with anxiety. And it's a really wonderful issue. Let me find. I'm gonna spoilers because I'm skipping to a wonderful page, which is literally
God, you guys are
an
asking such great
anxiety
questions.
spiral. This was really affecting to read. I'm so glad somebody shouted it out and that I got to hunt it down. I've dealt with ADHD, depression, and anxiety, and these are very familiar issues handled really well in the context of, in her case, they're working it into the superhero framework because she is a Green Lantern, which means her power is willpower, and she feels like a failure all the time because every day is a struggle to get out of bed, and then like she'll unexpectedly like catch a sub and save a city, and like sometimes she's just on it, and then other times the slightest thing makes her want to freeze up and feel like she can't do anything, and that is very human and very wonderful. And I'm so glad somebody hit me.
That's
with
what's
it to
one of my
spoke.
favorite parts of the Green Lantern mythos is the notion that you can actually depress them out of their powers. That you can
Yeah.
that you can just give them a terrible time. Green Lantern will be a whole nother show. Oh God, there's so much to unpack.
So much.
There's so much to
many.
unpack.
Thank you for the rec.
That's a great. That like. Again, like I need stuff like that for DC because I'm not up on
Windows
my
in,
DC.
Windows in.
We're gonna get in. We're gonna
be
get
good.
in. Somebody actually, I want to say Autistic Cosplay, which is a great handle, was asking. They were like, "I'm not a Marvel or DC person, but people have told me I should look in the X-Men because I have autism," and I don't know if like you should read the X-Men because they're fun, but like. What would be a good comic book for like? I'm trying to
on
think
the
of a
spectrum?
good comic book for someone. I'm trying to think of my own friends who are on the spectrum and what they read. And like,
We'd love recommendations from anyone in the audience who is in this category.
I'm really digging Shade the Changing Girl in that direction. Actually, you read the first issue, so this is a reboot of a new. It's a little psychedelic if you're down. Like it's not like a classic superhero. It's kind of a. This is the
We have
original.
the classic here.
Shade the Changing Man.
Well, the semi-classic. Once again, just like Doom Patrol, this was an older, like a 60s character who got revamped under this wonderful vertigo wave of DC reinvention.
And crazy is his power. That's
Yeah,
his.
he wears something literally called a madness vest.
and he's maybe from another dimension, but like he makes people create like it's so again problematic. But the new version is kind of a popular girl. She's kind of a bitchy popular girl at a high school somewhere in the Midwest who,
previous to the events of the book, has fallen into a medical coma.
Yeah, she was not to give too much away, but like she went skinny dipping with her kind of friends, with the kids who hung out with her because they needed to hang out with a popular person, and she hit her head, and they all just disliked her so much that they kind of just took a while dealing with it, and so they're all guilty, and then she woke up weird, and that's because there's now a thing living inside of her that is shade. So
there's an alien creature using the power of the Madness Vest.
So it's not even a human anymore. So she's this kind of like very off-kilter, not normal thing, and they just think that it's trauma, but maybe it's not. And it's I'm really liking it a lot.
I want more good recommendations. So I'm wondering if
I don't know anything about what you like. I feel like an idiot.
It's a really fun book.
Can I? Whose is that? I want to borrow that copy now. Can I borrow?
Yeah, of course you can borrow.
But
my
the new
copy,
one,
man.
Shade the
It's good
Changing
to
Girl,
be
which
part
we
of
might
the
have
wizard.
a
I have a
picture
copy
of
here
that you
somewhere.
put in
Oh, did I put a picture of Shade the
think you
Changing
had a
Girl
digital
in
one.
the? I may have brought a digital copy of it because I don't own a physical copy of it.
The X-Men in
should be a shade in
general are turned to by people in all sorts of marginalized groups because they're almost always telling stories about people who don't fit in or don't feel normal. And the way that those people can find their own strengths and find community and come together, which means they speak to tons of people in different groups. I'm curious about specifically heroes or things for folks on the spectrum, and I'm not sure
I know.
off the top of my head.
I'm feeling like a mild failure here.
It's interesting because this one of those examples I alluded to in the intro was that it's the sort of dangers of applying labels to comic book characters, and there's a chance that I'm remembering this wrong, but I think it was James Tynion, who has been writing Cassandra Cain, who was talking about the fact that in some versions, Cassandra Cain, who as a character became Batgirl and was nonverbal for many years, she has been, in some cases, like people identify with her who are on the spectrum or who are like borderline nonverbal, but there are other, I think, and please, like, I'm worried to even say this because I need to fact check it, but I think it was James Tynion who was saying he was reluctant to put that label on because the Cassandra Cain character has a history of like specific traumatic abuse that he wasn't sure, like, that's not exactly fair to say, like, that doesn't resemble the typical, if there is such a thing, experiences of a person who is on the spectrum. And so he's like, he'd rather treat her without that label than get it wrong. Or apply it where it doesn't necessarily belong.
And getting it wrong, you can like perpetuate a stereotype into a wrong direction, or like you can sort of like normalize something that shouldn't have been.
Well, no,
this is a memory of probably a Twitter conversation I saw like months ago.
Well,
I should really nail down.
I will say one of the great things, I've been having this quote saved for the correct moment. One of the great things about comic books, and this is a paraphrasing Grant Morrison, who said that sometimes superheroes exist to settle complex moral arguments by beating each other into the ground. Don't laugh, that's the way we deal with things in the real world too. But the nice thing about superheroes, though, is that they do break down these complex stories into more symbolic and metaphorical struggles, which is why sometimes even when they get it wrong, it's still useful. Yeah. I had a weird thought for our autism cosplay friend, The Vision. The Vision book. It's very...
In fact, the Tom King...
So you all know the Vision from the Avengers.
Oh my God!
Now it's kind of dark, and if you know the Vision from the Marvel movies, he's an android, synthezoid. And the book, he has built himself a wife and 2 children,
and a dog.
And not yet. Later, the dog comes later. They build the dog halfway through.
No, the dog's from the beginning.
It's not from the beginning.
It's from the very.
I promise you, he's not.
I don't remember the dog. I've only read the beginning.
I'm pretty certain he's there from the beginning.
I know because that's a whole issue about the dog.
Right.
I know only because I know about the dog like is kind of traumatic. And I would be curious. Actually, I don't. This is not a recommendation. Autism cosplay. I actually would love for you to like pick up a couple issues of this and tell us what you think. Because I would be genuinely fascinated by your opinion of it, of how you feel. It's not a representation of autism necessarily, but it's such a spectacularly interesting point of view, and it creates one of my new favorite characters. The Vision's daughter is now a character who is Viv
Yeah.
in the Champions, and I cannot wait for the cosplay of this character.
Yeah.
She's so cool. And so I would be really curious to see what you think.
I'm gonna like
They're struggling with sort of emotional issues and relating to people.
Yeah,
right?
because their whole thing is they want to
reason for
try
this,
and pretend to be. They're like we're gonna try and be human, and we're gonna be a human family, and but they're not.
Yeah, like I want to tread carefully in saying this because like I myself am not autistic.
We
I don't
are
have that
in tread
experience.
carefully.
No, I know,
territory.
but I also want to make sure that like I'm respecting those of you who do deal with this. But it does feel like even though they never label Viv or Vision or anyone in the family as having autism or being on the spectrum in any way, their behavior and their interaction with the world does seem to 100% mimic
fall into that
particular
direction.
category in a way that
it's very analytical.
someone with autism might be able to actually really identify with that character, but still see the strengths of being who that person is.
And then watching these analytical characters fall in love and experience theater, like one of the characters falls in love with Shakespeare and starts reading, like identifying really heavily with Shakespeare, and there's this intense romantic relationship that one of the characters. It's fascinating.
There is also, you get sort of really heartwarming stories like the one that went around after Guardians of the Galaxy hit theaters.
Drax.
Where someone said,
That's
like,
right.
my brother, I think it was they were talking about their brother.
Yeah.
They watched the movie and their brother was just incredibly struck by watching Drax. Because Drax, who's sort of literal for comedic effect in the movie, their brother said, like, that's how I see the world. And so that's one of those, like, without intending to necessarily create a representational hero, they did something that reached that viewer in a really special way.
Please don't read Drax in the comics, by the way. No,
quite different.
not yet. Not yet.
Very different. But I think that there's something to be said for like seeing. I feel like so many times, and I know this from just like my dealing with depression. Like you can feel, I'm saying me dealing with my depression and extrapolating that to someone who's dealing with autism. That's the best that I can do. But it's good to see people who I know are depressed, who also kind of are able to manage it and see their own value and continue to push through into the world and do their own thing. And I would imagine that someone with autism on the spectrum in any capacity would also enjoy that, and see like Drax actually has an immense amount of value and is invaluable to the team, and despite his shortcomings or whatever else,
social cues.
Despite all of that,
makes him fabulous and fun and great. It's like without that, he'd be less of a character.
So there's something to be said for like, yes, this is something that you have to manage and something that you have to maybe deal with, and maybe even something that you get made fun of. But it's also a wonderful kind of part of who you are.
And we have this thanks to these cameras, we have this wonderful community of people who can litmus test some stuff for us and tell us what they think.
Are you checking us because that's important?
Please, I'm like so excited. I'm so excited to have people read some of these books, and like I want to hear what you have to say. Some other stuff. Trauma recovery characters like Kate Bishop. The Punisher is hardly trauma recovery. He's actually
he's maybe the bad example of how to deal with your trauma. Maybe not the killing.
Jessica Jones. PTSD is like the most commonly dealt with. Like that is practically
before the stream.
Yeah, practically comics in a nutshell is PTSD. Kate Bishop is a great. She's the other Hawkeye. She's
her own book
Teen
right
Hawkeye. I love Kate Bishop.
She's fantastic.
Kate Bishop. And she has the most wonderfully dull origin of any human being. Like it's so like I love how dull her origin is. It's beautiful. I mean,
my life is boring. I'm gonna pick up a bow.
Well, it was like literally she's this rich New York girl from a very well off family. She got they never go into the details, but she got jumped in Central Park and accosted, and something happened. She doesn't go into it, but she was like, fuck it, I'm taking self-defense courses. I'm learning how to. I'm going to
defend myself.
I'm going to just get to the point where that shit ain't happening again. And it got to the point that when like supervillains like crashed a party she was at, she just shit up and was like found a bow and was like, I'm Hawkeye now, y'all.
This was in Alan Heinberg, Jim Chung's Young Avengers.
Young Avengers.
Yeah? One of my favorite books.
Great
of all
book.
time.
Yeah. Anything that's called Young Avengers.
You got me hooked on that years ago when it first came out. You were like,
Young Avengers, and I was like,
just
all right,
got
I'll give it
better
a
and
chance.
better.
I'll
Yeah,
give it
one
a
of my
chance,
all-time
and then
favorites.
I got on it. I was like, oh, Taliesin, Jesus, you're so right.
I'm
And
here
then
to
she
ruin
becomes
it.
sort of supporting character and then co-lead in Matt Fraction's Hawkeye run, which we should recommend every week. for
There
audience.
will be a whole
Matt
yeah.
Fraction and David Aja, art good.
Hawkeye's a great character. Hawkeye's a
He
great character.
became a great character.
He was always interesting. We'll do a whole. We may have to do a whole thing on,
One of the
on
original
superheroes who wear
Reformed
purple.
villains.
yeah, that is very
It's-
true.
I want to shout out also, just somebody on Twitter, I think, when we called this out, said, I hope you'll talk about this, and it's a really good point. In terms of not literally applying these psychological concepts, but representing them as mythology, in Sandman, we meet delirium and despair, two personifications of concepts, which were really important to me in some of my darker moments, because they sort of reflect, like, there's literally the personification of despair, and you sort of come to love her while you also see the destructive effect she has on everyone around her. But the way that she's trapped in herself is very compelling.
A week working on this episode and that didn't come up. Thank you.
Well, thank goodness
Thank
to
you,
the
chat
sharp-eyed
room.
people of Twitter whose names I will write down next time when I keep stealing your fun ideas. I'm so sorry.
We're still
Forgot
getting
about
used
delight
to this.
and delight. Well, delight's a whole other thing. Spoilers. Yeah,
Delirium is who sort of like a aspirational / cautionary tale if you especially have dealt with ADHD or other things. Like it was the sort of the best of chaos and the worst of chaos represented as this like delightful little sprite.
Charming little sister.
Is lust a lot of the time.
And despair is the not so charming little sister. Oh man, God! Yeah, thank you for bringing that back. We'll have a Sandman episode. God, we're gonna have so many episodes. We're gonna have so many episodes, guys.
Like, we
I'm
hope you keep
so
watching
excited.
and want more episodes.
Keep watching
Now
us.
we'll just
Keep watching us.
sit around
Slowly
the table
age.
with no cameras and talk about these things.
Which was
What else do we
older.
got? What else?
One of the
Yeah.
things with people, PTSD was the old man Logan is an interesting story about PTSD. Absolutely, especially for people who have like. I definitely know a lot of my comic book reader friends, especially from the old days, have masculinity issues, and like so like every now and then giving a story about like a guy having trouble is really good for guys who need to read about guys and don't want to like dudes occasionally need dudes to like talk to them about feelings, and it's great to have an old crusty beer soaked Logan tell you about why he's sad because it makes it okay.
And as you pointed out, Tony Stark's arc in most of the Avengers films and his own films has been one of dealing with post-traumatic stress.
Someone grab him by the shoulders and go, "Are you okay?"
He's not okay.
He's not.
He's not.
He's
far from it.
like literally the entire Iron Man 3 film is an entire like the entire film is him just like having to stop, sit down, and breathe deeply because he's having a panic attack.
Yeah.
I liked Iron Man 3 more than I liked Iron Man 2. I still prefer the first Iron Man. I know that you love the twist in Iron Man 3. I personally hated it, but all that aside,
I have a whole.
you have a whole thing. And I don't know that I agree. We've had this talk a couple times before.
You have. I have addendums
I
to it
can't
now.
wait.
Okay.
I have addendums to it now.
But all that aside, the thing that resonated with me the most from that movie is his nightmares. He's like, I'm fighting with a man, like, all I've got is my brain and my armor. I'm fighting with a god of thunder who was written about thousands of years ago. I'm dealing with a man who can turn into this giant hulking beast who's invulnerable and can lift a building. Like, we're fighting aliens from space. And I've got just a thin shell of vibranium, not even vibranium,
and I'm the adult.
titanium alloy. Yeah.
And I have to make sure everything's going to be fine because they're all crazy, and I'm the one who has to make sure everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. Do we have plots to deal with all these people? Okay, what if Captain America goes bad? I got to think about that. Are there other aliens? Are they coming? And like he just cracks.
And of course, those issues are also something that's been well represented with Batman in different stories.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This
Poor
feeling
Batman.
that you're the only defense against a bulwark, and that you need to have plans.
I have made so many bad decisions in my life off the notion that I'm the only adult I've ever met. It's not true.
You brought up Batman, and something that I like, and prepping for today, someone that I didn't even think about until this morning, Rorschach. And like,
Poor Rorschach.
Poor Rorschach. But
a character from Watchmen, the graphic novel by
he's the
Alan
one
Moore
that has
and Dave Gibbons.
the skibbity bops on his face, the weird Rorschach cheesecloth changing whatever thing that he wears. But Alan Moore said that Rorschach was like what he thought Batman would actually be like in real life, and just like a complete, total, just
Has
out
lost
there,
touch with
has
reality.
lost touch, like identifies more with the mask, which is why he almost refuses to take it off at any time.
Kind of sociopathic, a little
Yeah,
bit, a little bit
yeah,
of
but
a
still
high-functioning sociopath.
high functioning
She's such
sociopath,
a
like.
coin turn now,
But yeah, like I don't even know what to say about that character. But just like we were talking about Batman, I was like, I've got to
He's
throw
a
that.
very interesting
Gotta throw that
perspective
in
of
there.
like a high-functioning, dysfunctional person.
That
Yeah.
book is speaking of giant issues. That book is a whole. Watchmen is another. Like there's like so many books that we're just tapping on because they are literally a 2-hour conversation all by themselves.
Yeah.
And Watchmen's going to be a weird one.
And there's a lot about trauma and coping mechanisms in that book, and
Yeah.
and some very interesting portraits of people who make the wrong choices,
Yeah.
or unhealthy
Yeah.
choices in dealing with them.
books about unhealthy people.
Yeah.
People are asking. We may hopefully get more into Moon Knight. He's on the docket.
Oh, of course.
But we'll get there.
We haven't even-
Storm's depression in the 80s X-Men. I haven't gone back to reread Storm's kind of
But
like
was
crazy.
she
Does it hold up?
She's claustrophobic.
Claustrophobia is something she
claustrophobic.
deals with, but she has, if you haven't read Life Death, or Life Death 2,
Storm of the X-Men.
two particular single issues that stand out. I wonder, like, do they hold up, or do I just love them because I've always loved them?
We don't know.
I think
may
they're
not.
very interesting, whether or not you necessarily would write them the same way today. But one is written in the Storm has the power to control nature, and at some point she loses those powers. And dealing with that loss and the change to who she feels like and her identity makes her sort of tentatively like self-destructive for a period of time. There's an issue where she's basically trying to recuperate, and she's at Forge's house, and she's sort of debating like, what's even the point? Who am I without this? And that's like it's really beautifully dealt with in an issue called Life Death.
I know people. I know that there's a lot of contention about those issues now, where there are people who really love them and people who really hate them. And I haven't read them since I was a teenager.
Oh man, I should revisit.
I will
I do
say-
remember as a kid going like, Forge is the worst person in the Marvel.
Aww.
You're the worst.
I had the
didn't
opposite.
mean to,
I
though,
love
right?
Forge.
No, I didn't mean to. That's I always pay attention to the people who do real damage, which are the nice people who are just there to
so
make sure that they fail.
The man she loved
spectacularly.
built a machine which was used to take her powers, I believe, if
Yeah.
I'm remembering correctly, but not on purpose.
One of my favorite
porpoise
X-Men
symbol.
stories. I can't remember when it came out, but it was the one where Doctor Doom, kidnaps Storm and then puts her in like an Iron Maiden, or like he encases her in iron.
Was it
like
Storm
something
or
happened.
Kitty Pryde?
was-
It's a Fantastic Four one where it's the very beginning of the Reed Richards is a humongous bastard.
Maybe I could have sworn it was X-Men though.
Maybe he's done it more
It
than
was an
once.
X-Men
I don't
Fantastic
know.
Four crossover. Which might have been
Maybe that's what it is.
Really good art
It's-
and it stuck with me.
It was like early mid '80s. I know that, but Storm, like Doctor Doom, doesn't realize Storm's claustrophobia. Like he doesn't know she even has it. So when she gets stuck in this, like sort of like iron prison, and she can't move, and she's out cold, her subconscious takes over and starts to lash out at the weather systems of the entire world. And it's like the first time I saw like the full power of what Storm can do, and like she almost killed the entire X-Men. Like they were coming to Latveria to rescue her, but like these storms are buffeting them, lightning striking, the wind is the strongest it's ever been, and she's not even conscious. And like there was something so powerful about that story to me in terms of like just how deeply rooted these fears can be, like even if they're like irrational fears of like closed spaces or whatever else. There's nothing about the closed space that's going to hurt you.
Nothing irrational about claustrophobia.
But-
Sorry.
No, I don't like it either. I don't like it either.
But yeah,
But
Yeah.
like the closed space itself it's just a closed space. Like but if you have a trauma that's associated with that,
yeah.
then like the subconscious can kind of lash out. And I don't know.
So
I
much
was
Jeremy Hardy
really
in my head right now. It's so
You
good.
what?
I have a British comedian in my head right now. Just describing like bees are safe. Wasps are vicious killers. It's the only difference. That's a phobia. Well, the other one's a legitimate fear. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of comments from the comic room from the room. That's carrying Legion. I kind of want people to discover a lot of Legion. I don't want to go too deep into it, especially since I assume most of the
We have sort of hit all the major points. Sorry, Cass.
Drax. We talked about Drax. Scarlet Witch. I don't totally understand that question. is there going to be a place where we list all the comics that we talk about?
That would probably
That
be
would maybe be a
smart.
thing
That
that
would be
if
nice.
we.
It's week 2. We're still working on
we're
this.
still figuring that out.
We're building our show. Promise we'll get it.
We'll definitely at the end of the episode tell you what we're going to be talking about next week, so we can always give you a little bit of a heads up. But like, we're already off on so many tandems that we're like kicking ourselves with. But if you hear about
We should
anything,
try, though. We should
try.
yeah, there's no way you're going to read everything we talk about any one week. But if you hear one thing that sounds cool, just read one thing. Don't kill yourself.
We don't expect you to read all of it. We haven't read all of it.
I haven't. Yeah, I was about to say, like, I definitely haven't read all of it. I do want to say one thing about Legion while you're looking. One of the things that I love about his comic is that the X-Men Legacy stuff is that this idea that like you don't get rid of your depression, of your personality disorder. You don't. Those are things that you have. That like you have them. All that you can really do is learn to manage it, and to like rise above it.
We do not defeat our demons. We merely learn to live above them.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the quote I was looking for. I was like, what's that quote? And then you said it. It's like, you're a telepath, Amy. But that's one of my favorite things about the comic is that when it first starts off with X-Men Legacy, his demons are kicking his ass.
Yes,
like,
they are.
They're like he is almost catatonic, can barely move. His demons are winning, and like he slowly learns how to manage them. And he learns, oh, I'm not going to defeat these things. All I can do, like you said earlier, he has a prison that he can kind of put them in. All I can do is put them there and hope that they don't get out. And I can do my best to manage them and keep them in there, but they're always there, and there's always a chance they're going to get out and attack me. Even if they're minor, like even if it's just like, I wish my daddy loved me more, or like if it's like something even bigger or smaller than it, like, you know, so that's one of the things that I just absolutely love about that book is...
Yeah, they don't go away. You just you get really good at managing them, and I think especially for people in the creative output, like you're just going to have these things, and oftentimes they like you can learn to make them work for you and serve you when they're not kicking your butt.
Exactly.
And that's a good part of the metaphor. Yeah. Angry Lilith, we kind of answered this question, but I'll restate good stuff. Autistic teens later. I have my playlist. I got to get my comic book playlist for you guys. I have the songs. Someone was asking about Bruce Banner and the Hulk's mental illness issues and anger issues, which is, again, like a whole
I think it's one of those things where if you match them
episode.
Closely to psychological phenomena, it doesn't work. But if you use it as sort of an inspirational example of someone like something to take strength or wisdom from, then it can be. My Bruce Banner song on my playlist is Johnny Cash's "The Beast in Me."
Nice.
Which is my kind of like good anger management. So Bruce has been around so long. He's kind of gone through like 12. That's a whole episode.
Yeah.
We'll need a Hulk specialist.
Hulk. Yeah.
Something I wish I'd gone into for this. There are some wonderful portraits in comics of mental health professionals. There's
like Harley Quinn.
some bad ones too. But what's her name? Leslie Tompkins is some sort of
Tompkins, but
Batman's
was she
confidant.
mental health or she was a physician?
She's the regular physician. Who's the therapist?
A Marvel or DC? Because I've got a Marvel one.
In Marvel, there's Doc Samson.
There's
with
Doc
the famous,
Samson,
yeah.
X Factor issues, where he's sort of talking to each member of X Factor,
I'm-
one of the spin-off teams, about what makes them tick.
I'm probably the only person who really loves the Doc Samson issues of Thunderbolts, the Warren Ellis talking to Speedball. And there's also, because there's an evil therapist, because there's Carla.
Yeah.
We're going to do a Thunderbolts episode, but God, it's already on the list. There's a lot of episode recommendations. We are getting these in the chat, guys, and we're on it. We love these recommendations.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Like
legacy
what?
replacement characters. Like,
Nice. Yep.
do you guys know anything? Hellboy and mental issues. I'm not down on Hellboy.
I need to learn Hellboy. Are we all Hellboy blind?
We may need.
No,
we may need a
I've read
specialist.
Okay.
I've read a lot of Hellboy, but
Yuri is a huge Hellboy nut too.
Yuri is, right?
Yeah, we may have to bring Yuri.
I never really saw him as having like any like psychological like.
Arrested Development issues.
I mean, maybe, but like
I don't know.
Like I just saw that as kind of like a character quirk, I guess. Like I don't know. Like I never saw that as like this outstanding. Like he's dealing with some stuff, you know. Like
Interesting.
Interesting.
so.
What was the question?
But maybe I just didn't read deeply enough. Like
Yeah, just somebody who wanted to know if we had an opinion, and we don't have nearly you. Like you've got a little. We'd probably need to. Sometimes we're going to have to call in specialists, so we can learn.
So actually, since we haven't gotten into it, do you want to give a primer on Moon Knight?
Yeah.
oof.
Primer.
He's had a lot of different versions. He's
Poor
a
Moon Knight.
Marvel hero.
Such a cool costume.
Yes.
It's one of the cooler costumes.
How you keep it
Just
clean,
getting
I
cooler.
have no idea.
And I love I love his reasoning for White. I want the criminals to see me coming, and I
yeah.
want them to fear me. Like I love that.
Are they a cowardly and superstitious lot?
He is
Yes, they are.
he's very much Marvel's Batman. Like,
He is. He's like their answer
Moon
to
Knight
Batman.
is Marvel's Batman.
So many wonderful characters started as just a knockoff of
There's a
something.
great-
It's the thing we were talking
Yeah.
about where like you build on what other people have left. Like it really doesn't matter how you got created in comics. There's a chance you will become amazing.
Yeah.
So here's what I know of Moon Knight.
Bring it
Here's-
on.
So Moon Knight, Mark Spector, right?
Yes,
Is it
Mark Spector. Well
is a special, like a what's the word I'm looking
Mercenary.
for? Mercenary. Thank you. I was like specialist.
Wow, well done.
He's a mercenary. He's on a mission with another guy. The other guy double crosses him, kills him in front of a statue of Khonshu. I want to say.
Yeah, I think that-
the
well, we've
Egyptian
never heard it
god,
said out
like an
loud.
Egyptian god
Khonshu.
of
he's
the
in a,
moon.
Yeah, he's
And,
he's in a temple.
Yeah, he's in a temple in Egypt, like carrying out some hit for some dude who's paying him, and the other dude double crosses him, kills him, takes all the money. Mark Spector dies in front of this statue of Khonshu.
Khonshu, I want to say. Yeah.
Khonshu. And Khonshu comes to him and says, "I will make you sort of my avatar, and you can fight for justice in the night under my light," basically. And he goes on to do that. However, he then, in later incarnations, starts to have they just kind of manifest as voices in his head. And he starts to lose his kind of sanity in that capacity where he's like, I don't know if this is real or not, but a god is talking to me, and I'm gonna go fight this guy. So that's as far
And
as
like
I
he
remember
gets
it.
better the more full the moon is.
I think so.
Yeah.
The stronger the moonlight, the stronger he is, because like he's blessed by more of Khonshu. But like again, like they kind of treat it as like, but did an Egyptian god like?
But
in
did
any
And
other
this was the thing
title?
that I guess I never read the Ultimates, but I guess they did this with Ultimate Thor.
They did where there was Ultimate Thor is he actually a Thor
is he a
in
guy
another?
who thinks he's Thor, or is he Thor?
Is he
Yeah.
really
And what's
Thor?
the difference?
And like the original Ultimates line, yeah, like, but like, and like,
Which
wasn't
is
his
an-
like
Ultimates was an alternate
Mjolnir-
universe version of the Marvel universe that started
Universe
circa
1610?
2000.
God damn, I gotta get that
2000,
image.
2001?
I got a thing. I'm gonna pull up the passport at some point that shows all the stamps. No longer existing universe. We'll do
Yeah.
we'll do an Ultimates episode.
It was sort of designed as a, like, let's say they hadn't been created since the
In the
30s
60s,
and
yeah.
been iterated on since then. Let's say we were starting fresh, how might we do it? And a lot of concepts got pulled from there and wonderful characters got created there. So, like, the movies owe a heavy debt to the character redesigns for the Ultimates, and Miles Morales comes from the Ultimate Universe, who is now one of the Spider-Men of the Marvel Universe.
Betterman.
Spider-Man.
Spiderman.
But so Moon Knight, I guess, in that original run, or like in the most notorious run, again, Bill Sienkiewicz art.
Yeah, well, he
who
was.
writing that, Doug Munch.
Oh God, I'm trying to remember. It's been a while.
Didn't Warren
Well,
Ellis just did.
we'll get to
He's
Warren.
more recently, but
Yeah.
We'll get to Warren in a second, but like he also it was another MPD because they again it's
Another
comics.
MPD.
We love MPDs. He had a little girl and another guy in his head who would talk to him
Yeah.
and like tell him things.
But yeah,
essentially
like
he was
one
kind of his own supporting cast for a while.
Yeah.
yeah, but one
he
of
would
my
sort of take on different personas who could do
Well,
different things.
and then Bendis took him because Bendis loves it. Brian Michael Bendis,
Yeah.
who's like one of the guys who writes.
he's written for everything at Marvel.
Written everything
basically, yeah.
all at once. He's a machine.
Did a ton of work revamping the X-Men, or the Avengers, and then later the X-Men.
Yeah.
But the Avengers from the disassembled story
Disassembled.
on
Did
about 15 years back, I'm going to say.
Yeah, he did Secret War too.
yeah, he did Secret Wars.
He's responsible for a lot of the other end of the
He did Secret War singular.
Secret War singular. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, wait, no, he didn't, because that was Hickman.
Yeah, he and Hickman.
We discussed the dumbness of titles last
Yeah.
time. Please make it
But
easier to keep track, guys.
Bendis turned him into an LA TV producer, producing a bad TV show based on his life.
Wait, really?
Yeah,
I've never read this one.
Bendis did a 12-issue run of Moon Knight, where Moon Knight was a LA executive, like who are, if you live in LA, you know that this is hilarious because executives are the dumbest. We don't have one. I can say this: like a lot of them are the dumbest people on earth. Barely literate Neanderthals that kind of lumber through our city, buying really expensive champagne and desperately trying to mate. It is like
Taliesin Jaffe.
Taliesin Jaffe. I am available for your
Hello,
project.
executive producers.
I come from a long and distinguished line. And so it was kind of a great running joke is like just so like not being at work and being difficult to get a hold of and coming in with weird bruises was like, oh, he must be the executive producer. That makes perfect sense. Maybe he's running an underground fight club. Who knows? It's the
executive producer,
It's the
whatever.
perfect LA disguise for a superhero of just you're useless. Your job involves you just vaguely existing.
Oh my goodness.
It's so awful.
We just call you for an opinion here and there and hope that you can help us get money. From time to time.
They're like licensing his life rights as a mercenary. Like it's supposed to be some bad TV show that's
Okay,
kind
so
of popular.
someday topic comics in Hollywood.
So, but at the time, it was like a weird time in the Avengers, and so for the first the first issue, it's not even a couple, he's adapting like Captain America tactics and Wolverine tactics and Spider-Man tactics, and Captain America, Spider-Man, and Wolverine, who are Avengers, are kind of assisting him, but actually they're all in his head. And so he's imagining Spider-Man and Wolverine and Captain America as three parts of his personality, telling him what to do, and like he's got claws that he built, and he's got a shield that he built, and like sometimes he's like being tactical, and then he'll get held down and he'll go feral and pop the claws and just turn into Wolverine, or his idea of Wolverine.
Whoa.
It's really, it's fun and weird, but like it could only last so long before it completely fell apart.
So what like psychological disorder would we say?
It doesn't. That's
Is
the
it?
problem.
So he's just kind of like wacky.
It was a full-on MPD, that like a form of MPD that doesn't really exist. And so Warren Ellis, who's this great comic writer, came in right afterward. And we have a picture, I want to bring this up because it is the sexiest thing on earth. It's Moon Knight Ellis.
Oh, God. His suit.
Warren came in and tried to marry every version of Moon Knight that had come before, because Moon Knight's been toyed with a lot, and he created the suit, among other things.
Oh, God, that's suit.
And created a really fun version of Moon Knight who isn't crazy necessarily. Like I don't want to spoil anything. They kind of narrow him down in a way that I really like, and they distill him into yes, there was intervention by something.
Yeah. But like
it
it's
altered
hard to
him.
determine like
I don't want to say anything, but like he gives him a base origin that functions and has been actually, since other writers have picked him up since, have kind of gone, yes, this works. Let's stick with this.
Nice. I've heard great things about the current Jeff Lemire run.
Yeah, who bounced right off this. Like Bendis was the last of the classic Moon Knight before Warren came in and went like,
no,
that was great. That was 7 issues, 8 issues. There's nothing left to say there. Let's take everything and shake the box and see if we can get all the pieces to just fall in a way that makes sense. We will get into like Hawkman at some point and like complicated characters. Where,
No.
I know. Literally, they had a contest at Comic-Con where, like, if you can figure out how Hawkman makes any sense, we will give you a prize.
and no one
Like a
could.
no prize.
No, they did. They made it work. It's a famous. Oh yeah, we'll go into that. But it's
It can't be that famous. I don't know.
very iffy. It's DC. You don't know this.
No, you're right. It's when DC is like the biggest blind spot I have for comics.
Give us time.
We'll get there. We're gonna change you.
I want you to. I want you to so bad.
But I like the Bendis run, but it has nothing to do with the Ellis run. And the Ellis run runs so well into
And
suit.
the suit and the artwork. Who does the artwork for the Warren Ellis run? Do you
I
remember?
feel so guilty for not knowing
Declan
this.
Shalvey, or was he later?
Because the artwork, just the art, like I can remember, like there's one entire page. It's just black and white, and you can see him like going down like a fire escape, chasing something. Like
Yeah,
the way that they
beautiful.
navigated like
So
the
noir.
movement of the frames, I was just like, oh my god, this book.
And like, there's actually an image in there, guys, called Moon Knight Problematic. I think I may have put in there's Moonlight Problematic. And this is why, while I love Moon Knight, I'm glad they kind of this is the image that kind of the cover that kind of breaks down why we had to kind of reinvent him a bit. I don't know if it may be too deep in there, the Moon Knight Problematic
Zach,
image.
we have you.
Or they might be dealing with real problems for the next episode.
We insulted producers, and now they will
They
never
won't-
help us
they'll
with
never help us
anything.
again.
We insulted executive
Executive
producers. Producers actually do a lot of work.
Can I be an executive producer if I promise not to sue? That is actually a thing that happens in this city.
Okay, I think Declan Shalvey was on Volume 1 with Warren Ellis.
We are literally Googling this.
Yes, I'm
Questions.
This
we
is
have-
important.
yeah.
We have to know.
We actually are probably going to have to do a whole
Volume
episode
2
on
is
autism
Brian
in comics.
Wood
That
and
may actually
Greg
be a thing.
Smallwood.
There's so many questions in here about that, but
Nice.
that's cool.
Interestingly, I know at least some folks on the spectrum, I think, identify with Cyclops and other characters who have sort of difficulty expressing their emotions and relating to people.
That's interesting.
Just because
I love
it's
Cyclops.
not like a clinical thing, but it's about a way of seeing the world or being misunderstood by other people.
Can I say what might be something that might be kind of dumb?
Sure.
My favorite.
I'm not gonna stop you. Go ahead.
Say something dumb, Mackie. One of my absolute favorite things about Cyclops is that his lasers are red.
Oh.
That's cool. I totally get that.
Like when I remember when I was a kid, I was like, I like this character because he shoots red lasers and red is pretty. Like, I don't know, like...
Fair.
There were red lasers in my headcanon, too. Like, for those of you who missed last week, I didn't know what the X-Men were when I was a kid. I just had other kids describe them, and so I have versions of the characters in my head that make no sense.
Oh, but you correctly guessed the color of Cyclops'
He
lasers.
had a big round thing, and it was like...
Which makes sense. He's called Cyclops.
because he's called Cyclops, and it was just a big red, like punch that happened. I really dug it. It was
Yeah,
he looked a bit like Havoc.
I feel like so juvenile being like, his optic blasts are red. And like,
They're pretty.
What other color could they be?
No, I know, but like, it's just so funny to me that like you're like, Cyclops. Some people identify with him because he's a bit on the spectrum. I'm like, his lasers are red.
His
like,
lasers are red. That's
valid
all you
reason
need.
to
That's
love
a
anyone.
valid reason.
All right. Well,
I like characters
because
because their costumes are purple sometimes. That's enough to make me like
Is
the
purple
character.
your favorite color?
It is.
I mean,
Purple is my
I see
favorite
that you're
character.
dressed in it.
This shirt has special meaning, but yes, this is
I like all of this. This is really nice.
and I just got this, so I'm very pleased. I'm trying to think.
What else? What are we missing?
What else we have? Boy, there will be a Purple Man conversation at some point, but not today. We'll get there. If for no other reason that I owe people an explanation for that awful cosplay.
I remember when you walked into that party, like all of us were just like, "Wow, oh."
That was before Netflix. Deadpool as a whole. That's a complex. I mean, like.
He has had a lot of different depictions.
I had a guy on Twitter this week, and I just happened to be there at the right moment. Who was like, I just finished reading Deadpool, and what was it? It was like Deadpool and Carnage. What would you recommend for someone who really has just found a Deadpool and Carnage and really dug them? I'm like, well, I was like, Ellis is Punisher for the violence, but then I was like, there's that version of Deadpool from X-Men. For those of you who must know who did, if it's in a movie, we assume you know. There's that Deadpool. Did you read Uncanny X-Force?
That was a wonderful book.
And like that Deadpool, I'm like, I kind of wanted to be
The
like,
one
I
where
wanted.
they were all like in the black and gray. Oh god, I love.
And I
those.
kind of wanted to be like, do you want to see Deadpool like come down to earth and have to deal with real people?
It's an interesting, like, that's
really
my
interesting.
favorite, like, attempt to kind of do, not where Deadpool is serious, but Deadpool in a serious universe.
Yeah.
But still being Deadpool. Like, it shouldn't work, but it really does in that book.
And there's
But generally, I like him, like, being nice and silly. Like, Spider-Man Deadpool is a
Sure.
book going on right now that people really love.
But like that thing, and I'm not going to say what it is because super spoilers. But like Deadpool and the culmination of his little bromance with Archangel made me cry. Like I had to put that down, and like that's just the saddest, most like if you're like ready for like a deeply traumatic, lovely moment with that character.
Well, and like that book does a really good job of saying, like, Deadpool is this outlandish, fourth wall breaking, wacky character. How can we put him on a team? Mm-hmm. You know, that's one of the things that I liked about that book so much is that we really saw Deadpool actually operating on a team really well.
This was the run, I think, by Rick Remender with art by Jerome Pena?
I
know
have
it was
on the list of
Remender.
things
I know
eventually
it
want
was.
to talk
I know
about.
it was Remender. I have a hard time remembering artists because writers are what I want to be a writer, so I identify and memorize those much more than artists. But Remender. I know wrote it. Sorry, I knocked my water.
So many good episodes. Question from Matt. Seriously, what's up with the two mugs? You're a freaking big guy.
One is water, one is coffee.
And if I had mugs, I would have two of them as well.
Yeah, and just because it was asked, I've made this joke with my wife Brittany more than a few times. I almost always have 2 to 3
High five!
liquids.
All the beverages! Yes!
Have, like, we will go to a restaurant and I'll be like, I want tea, but I also want water, but I also want a soda. I'll take all of them.
Yeah.
Like,
all the fluid.
I try not to do it
I
at restaurants
want
because you go
every
broke.
fluid.
But But whenever it's an option, like, yeah.
Like, I'm sure I drive
There's a
Brittany
soda
nuts.
bar. Oh, you do.
In fact, I know I drive her nuts, but I'm sure this one specific thing probably, and if she's on the chat, you can chime in.
Can we have her on
wife.
for the Squirrel Girl episode, by the way?
Oh, she absolutely, yeah. The two of you,
best costume.
the two of you could really have fun with Squirrel Girl.
We're gonna start having guests eventually.
Well, we wanted to do like we wanted to get a report down for 2 or 3 weeks, but I know I drive Brittany nuts at home because I'll like I want water. Like I should be healthy. I should go drink water. I'm gonna go get some water. I'll sit down. 5 minutes later, man, I really want some tea. I'm gonna go get some tea. Go up, get some tea, come back, and like 20 minutes will go by, and Brittany will walk into the room and be like, "You have like 4 glasses." Well, this one is tea. This one was water. This one was the coffee that I had. This was warm water because this water was a little too cold. Yeah.
They're not mad that we have beverages. They're mad that we don't clean up after ourselves.
That's very fair.
I will clean up after myself, but I had 4 drinks within 20 minutes.
The water you're not using? I'm calling you out because I'm exactly like
we were on a drought.
I will drink that water. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Exactly.
The chat wins a no prize. You're 6'5" and very thirsty.
So the
chat wins. The chat wins. That's yeah. That's Brittany. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, Brittany.
Hi. Speaking of which, yes.
I'm sick. And that's the other thing that she knows. We actually like just to get into. We're in a relationship. We're in love. We fit each other.
Like, yeah.
We're in love. It's fine. It's
I love
fine.
my wife. It's not weird.
I love my wife. It's wonderful.
So weird.
We fit each
like
other
being
really
a
well
grown-up,
because
Becky?
she's what's that?
What's it like being a grown-up, Becky?
Yeah.
It's pretty wonderful.
Aww. Did you mean to just start fiddling with your wedding ring, or was it like an automatic response?
I don't know.
Yes. Well done. 10 points. 10 points for
That was
Ravenclaw.
amazing.
Well done.
So
I'm just gonna continue your sentence.
I'm enjoying this
7 more
tangent.
times.
I'm enjoying this tangent.
She is tiny and small and doesn't eat her entire meal whenever we go out. But I am a giant and require much more fuel than the average person. So like
Stealing her food for years.
no, it's not stealing. It's I'm gonna eat. No. Wait. It's I'm gonna finish my meal. She's gonna eat as much as she can, and 9 times out of 10, she's like, "All right, I'm done." And my eyes go, "You're done? There's so much for me now." And she's like, "Here you go. I know you're still hungry." Like, so we fit each other really well.
Aww.
I'm looking forward to the chat getting into that.
Yeah. That has everything to do with
comics.
the comic books.
Topic.
Does Cyclops
Hey,
ever
man.
miss? No, he doesn't.
It's about finding balance.
Alex Summers is messed up.
Adult Matt Key. This is an adult.
Never.
Zach is very confused.
We'll be getting into Zach's origin very soon. Yeah, there we are. Oh,
Yes!
that's everything I wanted.
That's my lovely wife.
Oh,
As Squirrel Girl.
so good.
That's adorable.
And
What party
that's,
was, and then we'll figure out
that
what
was
party.
the last Avengers party that got shut down by the cops.
Oh, that's right.
We were loud.
They were very
We were loud. Even
Wow.
though we were in a big warehouse, we were still loud. In the apartment. There's actually a whole like big story about it.
Then you were the new Avengers running away from registration.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But my favorite story from that was we get like the officers come in. They're like, we need to shut you down. It's like 11:30. We're like, oh my god, it's only 11:30. So anyway, we're outside. I'm dressed as Doctor Strange. My fiance at the time, wife now, Brittany, is dressed as Squirrel Girl.
Was it the same outfit that Barrowman wore, or was it just a Squirrel Girl outfit?
It was a Squirrel Girl
Okay,
outfit,
just
not the
checking.
same outfit. No,
Just
that was
checking.
especially
That
made
would've
just
been
for him. Yeah. And then a couple other people were out there in different costumes, and the Vice detectives were all around us because they like came into the party undercover, and they were called, for the noise complaint. It was at a place where like other parties had happened, where like drugs had been around and stuff like that.
Oh.
So it was kind of like we inherited that kind of mess without knowing it. And so they come in thinking like, oh, we've got another party at this venue. We better go check it out. Not realizing it's a bunch of dorks in like superhero attire.
Oh my
so they walk
gosh.
in thinking like, we've got to go blend in with this. We don't work at all. So, like, we're outside having this conversation with like 4 other Vice detectives who came in thinking they were undercover. And one of them says, so how did you guys know we were undercover cops? And I just looked at him. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him and did this. And he goes, yeah, now that makes sense. Like he was totally cool about it. And like I was just frustrated enough because like this is my fiance's birthday. Like my heart is breaking for her. We've put so much work into this.
I'm not
and
laughing
like
at your pain.
no, but then they're shutting it down.
A
and I'm
good
just,
vice raid can actually really like pin a party really perfectly. Though.
Yeah. But it was so funny. Like I was just frustrated enough be kind of a sarcastic
Like
jerk and be
undercover
like,
cops infiltrating your D&D game, but showing
Yeah.
in like cool sunglasses.
yeah,
And you're just like,
and backwards
guys.
cap, they're like, hey, what's up? So dungeons, right? Like it was very much like you very
LA
much
Vice.
don't belong here. Like,
LA Vice is so weird.
and like they
I
were
can't
like,
believe this is a real thing.
yeah, they were all nice guys, but like they just had to shut us down.
They had a
so.
job to do.
They had a job to do. It was frustrating.
Every now and then cops come here and it's really fun to try and just explain to them what we do here. It's always fun. And a couple of other things from the chat we've been collecting.
Keep staying on this.
Does Cyclops ever miss when they shoot out of his eye, laser shot out of his eyes? No, he never misses. Alex Summers, who's Cyclops' brother, is he messed up or what? Yes, we will get into more on.
But he's got like normal, like you talk to a therapist about your family issues kind of thing.
God, I want to do a whole thing on X Factor at some point. That was a fun run.
Wait, the X Factor that was the original team, or the X Factor that was led by Havoc?
Both. Yeah, I want to do all of them.
Or X Factor Investigations, which should be a TV show,
That
and
is
I'm
such a good name
disappointed
for
that
it.
it's not.
They're just starting to
Yeah,
figure out
somebody
TV.
tweeted that at us. They were like, "Do
It
you
should
agree
totally-
or not that Peter David's X Factor would be the best TV show ever?"
I agree that it would be the best TV show ever. And by
Gotta
the
start
way,
writing your usernames down. I'm so
by
sorry.
the way, those powers would all be relatively easy to show on television.
Yeah. They
Multiple
would.
Man, also one of my top 10 favorite
I
characters.
love Jamie. We got it. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Not an MPD.
Oh, his graphic novel, by the way, he did a graphic. I think Peter David wrote just the 6-issue graphic where
Yeah.
they discovered like every one of the dupes that he creates. The boop boop boop. There's 3
Okay,
dupes.
Jamie Madrox is a mutant with the
Thank
power
you.
to create other versions of himself, essentially.
He's
His
kind of
work
sort of shown
different
up in the
ways.
movies a little bit, but never just as kind of a gimmick.
Only in the movie that shall not be named.
Yeah, and
That's
like
been
and
the
very
last
gimmicky.
stands.
It's very much like here's a guy who, when you punch him, the two of them are there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the typical thing is like Impact creates a double of him.
So,
but
like,
he's
he
had
can-
some really interesting histories over the year and
He can
some sort
snap
of
his
like
fingers and create a dupe. Like, there's a second, third.
And
Like,
af-
he's a one-man army.
And after a while, they
Dupe
all
meaning
had
duplicate.
different personalities. After a while, and
But
started to
that's
get weird.
that's where this graphic comes from. Is that they like I think it was Peter David completely changed his
Yeah, no,
character a
in
little
X
bit.
This is a
Factor.
cool term. You're using graphic to mean graphic novel here.
Yeah, sorry, like a trade paperback. Sorry.
Cool. Yeah, yeah.
No, you're good.
Like,
Not
like
bad
a
thing,
six
Clarify.
a 6-issue limited run of just this.
Yeah.
Just called Madrox. I think it was like mid 2000s.
Yeah.
Where it was like he redefined that character as like every duplicate is now one like very much controlled by one aspect of his personality. Like whether that's like his self-destruction, like, and that's one of the things.
well,
I think
it's,
in the
it's,
first
it
X
started
Factor,
in the
like-
first X Factor, but then and which was also Mark Wade, and then in that X Factor.
Wait, was that Mark Wade?
That was
or Peter
also Mark
David?
Wade. Oh,
Not
no.
not the very first
Peter
X
David.
Factor,
Peter
but
David.
yeah.
Ah, so many. Yeah,
But I
my
think-
fault.
I think that Madrox
Started the weird dude
Madrox started it,
in,
and then X Factor followed Madrox and continued. I think that's
be
the
the other-
chronology of it.
We'll look.
I'm a
we're-
little fuzzy on this.
I want to do a whole thing because that character is so deep.
We
He's a
promise to
top
ever
10
talk
character.
about things that aren't X-Men, but clearly we're all gonna have to work on it.
Next week is going to be a big one. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Well, but let me also throw this out there, if I may. We're talking about mental health. All of us have admitted to having like our own thing. Like, I'm dealing with depression. You have your thing. You have yours. I don't want to say what those are because I'm not you. But we're all drawn to the X-Men.
Yeah.
And we've spent a very large portion of today
Probably
talking
not
about
a
that.
coincidence.
Not a coincidence.
That's the suggestion. This is not a coincidence. If you are looking for characters or a comic book to identify with, and you feel like you have some of the issues that we have all said that we deal with, just as ourselves, the X-Men is actually a really good place to look. That's why we've talked about it so much. They're a big, broad team of like disenfranchised people who are all trying to find their place in the world, and they all discover each other, and then become a family and deal with each other in that capacity. And
We're going to have to burn a whole episode or two just talking about our personal issues with the X-Men. I mean, like, that's just going to, I mean, like, and we're going to, yeah. It's one of those books that's just really heavy.
There's a book actually called X-Men Forever, which we should just steal as the title of our
X-Men,
show.
that might be the X-Men Forever. Red Hood suffers from any mental illness. Would you say the Red Hood? Red Hood, I don't think is crystallized. I don't want to say they've crystallized him as a character yet. Really, he's still baking.
There've been a couple different runs on. We need some more DC heavies.
Some-
Because Red Hood
yeah.
has had some definite like dealing with trauma stuff.
Sure.
it's definitely trauma, but like, what would his psychological, like, would it be like a PTSD or? Because he was also resurrected by Ra's al Ghul. Am I
So
right?
Red Hood is an ex Robin. For those of you who don't, he was a Batman Robin.
Jason Todd? Yeah.
Who was kind of a little iffy. But he's one of those characters. I don't feel like they've like sometimes characters are in this limbo state where they're kind of shifting them to the left and to the right and trying to find like what angle they balance at beautifully. And I feel like he's one of those characters where they're still
But he's not
prodding
been
him.
headlining his own book basically since 2011, and there's
Sure,
a lot of
yeah.
it that I haven't read yet, so I'm not sure what
Is
they've
that Red
like.
Hood and the Outlaws?
Red Hood and the
or-
Outlaws,
Yeah.
most
Yeah,
of
where
the
it's
time.
been, but like I know that there's been some swings in there about how they're going to deal with him. And I know that Morrison did a thing that no one liked, and bless Morrison for being willing to do things no one likes. And Jason Todd, by the original Robin, no one liked. That's a whole
Well,
conversation.
Poor
That's-
Jason.
Poor Jason.
So DC actually has a
love
ton
that
of
story.
like
I
know.
portraits of trauma
the
go
best. I love
pretty
you.
like you get a lot of examples in DC, which like at different times each of the Marvel and DC universes has been considered the more dark and gritty one. They kind of trade off.
They trade
Yeah.
off.
But there have been a lot of examples of like people dealing with complex situations, especially in like the Bat family, because a lot of those stories are about loss and rebuilding and trauma.
Can I throw this question out that has nothing to do with our topic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite Robin?
Too many. I have so many favorite Robins.
I'd like to say Stephanie Brown just to be a butt.
She's my favorite Batgirl.
She's really delightful.
Her Robin run, I was disappointed in her Robin
Well,
run.
because it was like an issue and a half.
Yeah.
Tim Drake is mine.
Tim's a really big one for me, and I will admit I like the robot Robin from Batman 1 Million.
Oh my god, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Tim Drake is like generational, and I have so much respect for him because like a lot of DC kids my age, like he's their Robin, like
Yeah,
hardcore.
I've never been a big like. I don't hate Dick Grayson. I just don't identify with him. He's
No.
not. He's never been.
I'm really fond
my-
of Dick Grayson.
I like Dick as a Batman. Dick Grayson as a Batman.
I prefer him as a Nightwing than I do as a Robin. But Tim Drake to me is like the perfect Robin.
Damien also won me over.
Damien did. I love Damien.
Totally
Damien
won
was
me
great.
over.
He's just
And-
he's
and-
one of those like you're never gonna get me to like this kid. Oh,
We
you can't. How
literally
did you do
have a
that?
Robin show on the docket coming.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
just gonna
sorry.
point that out.
Okay, sorry. I became fascinated by it, and I was like, "Hey, we're the Wednesday Club. We can talk about this." right?
Oh yeah, we totally. Somebody's asking if we know any comic book characters that deal with OCPD, which is different than OCD, but I don't actually know what OCPD is.
Yeah, what is OCPD?
I don't know because I know
can
OCD.
they further
it
define?
just a
Probably not. It's so
rephrasing of
knee
it?
deep in. No, it's something else. A good trade paperback for Uncanny X-Force. We'll try and tweet it out at some point.
Wait, what was that? What was the
Someone
question?
wanted to know where to start reading the Deadpool X-Force, Uncanny X-Force.
Just start
OCPD
reading
may
it.
just be-
I don't know what the volume is, but look up just X Force.
There's a villain that
That's
goes
led
that
by
way, but-
Wolverine. It
OCPD.
comes right after Second Coming and.
Sorry, what?
No, someone was asking where to start reading the Remender run. Just find the first issue of X Force by Remender. Like it's X Force #1, I think. It's right after the Messiah Complex Second
There,
Coming
unfortunately,
run.
I think he followed another
There's
run
so
that
many.
was also called Uncanny X-Force.
There's X-Force is a problem. We will make a link because there's like 5 different titles that all look the same and have the same cover.
Yes.
So
What
sorry.
you're looking for, I believe, is Uncanny X-Force: The Apocalypse Solution.
Yes, well done.
By Rick Remender and
But
Jerome
he's
Opeña,
still-
probably.
No,
But
that's
he still had comics before that, right?
yeah,
Like,
but they're not the ones they're looking for.
Wait, what?
They
do we-
want Deadpool.
Remender in
But
general.
Deadpool was still in those, was he not?
No, that was where it started. I know it's so complicated. It's like it
Oh,
took me
okay.
it took me like
That's
5
what
tries to
I
figure out
jumped
where to
on,
start
so
to
I
read.
may have missed some stuff before that.
There was,
I
but
was
they've
reading
been-
some of the Uncanny, like because they got tied up in the Messiah Complex
Yeah.
story and all that stuff.
That's so many. Matt is not a grown up.
Wait, what?
Somebody asked if you're a grown up. No, you're not.
No.
We did declare you one, but I guess we took it back.
Yeah. Okay. Stuff we've already. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions to talk about because we only have 10 more minutes.
Yeah. So OCPD may be just obsessive compulsive personality disorder, according to a quick Google search, which is one of those things where I think the treatment of it has varied over time and our consideration of it has varied over time.
I don't. What is the definition of obsessive compulsive personality disorder? Like this is.
I know there's like the tropey version of OCD.
I feel like it would take me a day to answer this properly. Like I feel like
Yeah.
any answer I give is too sloppy just because I'm not. I hate being sloppy.
Yeah,
But
and
perhaps
we're
it's my,
also we're also doing our best to be very respectful of the people who manage these every day.
Here's a good question. Supporting. We talked about a lot of lead characters with these kind of disorders. Supporting characters, though, of kids, like what are some good supporting characters? Which was always an interesting way to take a conversation like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. I know. Now we're just all going to stare, going.
Yes.
Now is the
Watch us
brain
stare
still
back
in
at you as we
version.
think.
Slowly drooling. Usually a lot of these characters, and this is just due to the nature of books, tend to be villains. I mean, and we use villain very loosely. Are by their very nature tend to be problems for the superhero to solve, which I hate that phrasing, but it is kind of the there's characters like the Turtle over in the Flash. Or Pied Piper in the Flash, who eventually becomes a hero in the Trickster, like some of the Flash villains who are.
I mean,
Harley started off, but she's doing her own thing. We've already talked about her.
But the Flash villains are always an interesting place to go here because by the nature of the best of the Flash books, his villains are kind of nice. Like he doesn't have his villains. There's something about the Flash character where he kind of his rogues gallery, and they call them the rogues gallery. All are kind of like those guys who are robbing banks and being awful, and then something big will happen. They're like, we're stopping all this while real shit gets done. It's been great. Do you guys need anything? Because we're gonna be truce. Time out.
We just wanted the cash. We don't need world domination.
We were here for cash and like a trip to the strip club. That was really all that was in it for us. We're not gonna be a problem for like a month. Totally cool.
Justice League, do your thing. We're gonna be back here.
I'm going to steer this back here because the answer to this question, this earlier question, sorry.
Of OCPD?
Of OCPD, is actually ties into a wonderful recommendation that we talked about a bit when we were planning out this episode, but we didn't really have time to try to reach out or put it together. There is a wonderful woman named Dr. Andrea Litamendi, who has is a trained professional in the area of psychology, and has a big, huge comic book fan. I think on Twitter she's like Arkham Asylum Doc or something like that.
That's such a good handle if that's true.
But my quick Google search reminded me that she was doing a podcast, or might still be doing, the Arkham Sessions, the psychology of different episodes of Batman the Animated Series. So there's actually a Comics Alliance article popping up right now on the Arkham Sessions, the psychology of OCD in Batman the Clock King. So she is writing here pretty comprehensively. Again, it's a villain, but
such a good one though.
Wow.
But the title villain is a seemingly harmless, time-obsessed efficiency expert who learns the unfortunate lesson that one small change in his schedule can turn him into a vengeful killer. Of course, Batman will let him get away with demolishing trains, overriding the city's traffic controls, and strapping Gotham's mayor to the top of the clock tower. With some insight from the episode's writer, the show, this episode of the podcast, delves into the traits and states of people who are obsessive-compulsive. And so this article goes into OCD and OCPD. What's the difference? Defines it. Obsessive-compulsive disorder is an anxiety disorder characterized by obsessions and compulsions. Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder is an enduring, long-standing pattern of behavior characterized by rigid adherence to rules, an overwhelming need for order, extreme fixation with lists and minor details, and perfectionism. So it goes into the differences and the coping mechanisms, and this is just, and Dr. Litamendi is, I think, a wonderful resource for a lot of these, and she deals specifically with questions like this and how they apply in our fictions.
Wow,
that's
the Clock
solid.
King kills both of us.
I know. I have a weird love of that character. Just because we're running out of time, a couple of things I want to cover.
I'm gonna check on her Twitter.
Somebody,
just to see if I got that right.
Mojo don't socialize. Asks if characters have disorders, disabilities that have overcome them as opposed to being defined by them. It's kind of one of the things about these characters, though, is since they have to constantly, unless it's a limited run character or one of those things, they kind of can't overcome them. And I think that's actually
the question is, can they? Would we want them to?
Would we want them to?
It's sort of
And it's not necessarily even in your own I've got issues and disorders, and I know that they're just going to be a part of me for the rest of my life, and I'm good with it. I make good with them. You make peace and you learn how to deal with it.
Then again, there are characters who make choices that hurt themselves or others, where Jessica Jones, for instance, deals with trauma, and we root for her to find healthier ways to deal with it. It won't erase things. But there's certain progress that's made from she's not always at her darkest.
No, and Tony
Arkham
gets
Asylum Doc. That's Twitter. Arkham Asylum Doc is Dr. Litamendi, and she's just wonderful.
And with Jessica Jones, we have seen an evolution where she did get married and to Luke Cage, and they had a daughter, and she pulled out of the superhero game. She's like, this is not helping me. I just want to raise my kid. And then she's going after her husband, can we please stop being superheroes?
That worked for a while.
Like,
Making
but
the question of
it did.
making choices that are good for
Or
you.
Exactly.
Tony's now a recovering in the books is a recovering alcoholic, and
Yes.
he doesn't sing. He doesn't drink anymore.
And he brings it up every once in a while, like every so
good
often,
ways.
like, but in good, exactly, like,
Yeah,
man,
Matt
I could
Fraction
really use
wrote
a
a really
drink. Never
wonderful take
mind.
on that. Like, there's I think an annual or a one shot that Matt Fraction wrote with Iron Man where he goes to a meeting, and it's really wonderful.
Oh wait, I think I've read that.
Yes, Umbrella Academy is coming up, chat room. Last question before we wrap everything up. Are there any books that you would recommend that got you through a dark time in your life? As like just something that kind of like is like a good, as a good book to read if you're having a rough time and want to feel better about the world in any way or otherwise? That's a tough question because I love reading in general. I find especially outdoors.
I mean, like the weird thing for me is like, and like you're gonna get so tired of me saying this. Like my go-to for everything is
Doctor Strange. I know.
But that's partial. Like I think there's an answer in that by itself because I identify a lot with Doctor Strange in terms of like when I was a kid, I was not an athlete. Can you tell? But like I was not an athlete. Like I was not necessarily like a social outcast, but I was always the weird kid in the group. Like I was just goofy and silly and like, that guy. But I found so much value in studying, and I found so much power in studying, and I was able to identify with Doctor Strange in that capacity. So a lot of times, like I'll just read Doctor Strange and get happy. So.
Do you have any before we roll it up?
Yeah, a lot of my favorite books are just the ones that like took me away from things, not necessarily because but like I will shout out Sandman. Very dark.
Sandman.
But like it helps you see hope in darkness, even though it's full of
If you're down about reading with people with having trauma and are okay reading some dark things, The Max was a really good run.
You were telling me about it
But it's
earlier.
very traumatic, but people come out of it really well. And if you want something a little lighter, I actually think Ultimate Spider-Man is a nice, good, solid, fun
It is so
superhero
good,
read.
too. Yeah.
If you're experiencing depression or trauma of any kind, please, therapy. I'm a user. I'm a big believer in it. Drugs, I know they're scary. I know you're afraid that they're going to turn you into somebody you're not. If you're having that kind of depression, you're already acting like somebody you're not. This is just a great way of coming back to yourself and getting some freedom. And even when they're not working, letting them figure out what you need is a great way to get healthy.
But the right ones can make you feel yourself again.
Yeah.
Next week, Image. We're going to be talking Image.
25 years. Image is 25 years old. So we will try to cram all that into 2 hours.
Try and avoid Marvel and DC and talk about Image books, not too many superheroes.
We'll still talk about the X-Men. Come on, let's be honest.
Let's talk about Saga. We'll talk about Wicked and Divine. We'll talk about Youngblood. What are there any single issues on sale?
It's all collected editions, but they're like $3. They're on sale on Comixology. There's a big Image bunch up until Monday next week.
Is
nothing to go
Five
wrong.
Ghosts of Fabian Gray? That's Image, right?
I think so. I haven't read it. It looks amazing.
God, I love that book.
We're
so
all
much.
going to bring a couple of our favorites, and we're going to talk a little bit about the history of Image. Do you want to wrap up?
My name is Amy Dallen. Thank you so much for watching. Who are you guys?
I'm Taliesin Jaffe. You can find me as Executive Goth on Twitter and Instagram.
I'm Matt Key. You can find me at the Matt Key on Twitter, and that's the only place I am apparently.
And just to wrap up, comic books, they're full of good ideas and bad ideas, but take strength where you can, take hope where you can, and never be worried about asking for help. Thank you for watching!
Mwah!